What if the comet we believed was gone forever is not truly gone? What if 3I Atlas, the interstellar wanderer, could return sooner than anyone dared to expect? Astronomers insist that hyperbolic comets do not come back. They blaze across our skies once, then vanish into eternal dark. Yet in the strange behavior of 3I Atlas, in its brightness, its chemistry, and its orbit, another possibility lingers. What if return is not accident but intention? When 3I Atlas was discovered in late 2019, the astronomical community felt a familiar thrill. Another hyperbolic comet, following in the footsteps of Oumuamua, had entered our solar system. Its trajectory showed it came from far beyond Neptune, an interstellar traveler just passing through. For scientists, these visitors are goldmines of information, carrying clues from the far reaches of the galaxy. But unlike typical comets, these interstellar bodies are not supposed to come back. Hyperbolic means open an orbit that escapes the sun forever. And yet, 3I Atlas refused to behave in ways we expected. Its brightness spiked and dimmed irregularly, far beyond what normal cometary models predicted. Some claimed it was simply volatile ices reacting to the sun, but others noticed patterns that felt stranger. As it approached the inner solar system, anticipation grew. Would it blaze brilliantly in the sky, visible to the naked eye, rivaling the great comets of history? Instead, 3I Atlas disintegrated before it reached perihelion. A comet that dies before its closest approach should vanish, leaving nothing but dust. But this is where the story becomes unsettling. Fragments were tracked, some small, some surprisingly stable. Pieces that, by all logic, should have dispersed, seemed to endure, hinting at resilience no one predicted. If even a portion of those fragments maintained integrity, their trajectories could bend them back into our inner system, and that, by definition, should not be possible. This is the first great mystery. How does a hyperbolic comet leave traces that might return? Our laws of celestial mechanics are built on centuries of observation. They tell us that hyperbolic travelers are one-way visitors. But 3I Atlas hints at a loophole. Could gravitational interactions, fragmentation dynamics, or forces we do not yet understand allow a supposed one-time comet to revisit? If so, the universe is far less predictable than our textbooks claim. The possibility of return forces us to consider deeper implications. For centuries, comets were seen as omens, heralds of disaster, messengers of change. The ancient Chinese recorded them with dread. Medieval Europeans believed they foreshadowed plague or war. Even in modern times, comets stir unease. But for scientists, comets are time capsules, frozen relics from the dawn of star systems. If 3I Atlas returns, it will not only test astronomy, it will test imagination. Why was its brightness so unstable? Why did it fragment so violently before reaching perihelion? And why do remnants behave as though they are more than random debris? Each question gnaws at the certainty of orbital science. And each unanswered question deepens the suspicion that 3I Atlas is no ordinary comet. If fragments of 3I Atlas cross paths with Earth again in coming decades, scientists will face a paradox. Either our understanding of cometary dynamics is incomplete, or the comet is following rules we do not yet recognize. Some researchers argue that outgassing forces alone might explain anomalies, but others whisper of something more, that 3I Atlas may have carried complexity in its structure, in its motion, perhaps even in its intention. That last word, intention, haunts me. As a scientist, I am trained to resist anthropomorphism, to treat natural objects as natural. Yet, when a comet behaves in ways that bend rules, we cannot help but wonder, are we misinterpreting physics or missing a signal? And this is where fear creeps in. If return is possible, was disappearance ever final? What if 3I Atlas never truly left? What if its remnants still lurk in the solar system, unseen, waiting for trajectories to carry them back into view? The idea that a hyperbolic comet could re-enter our skies unsettles every assumption we hold about celestial motion. We pride ourselves on prediction. Orbital mechanics is one of the most precise sciences we possess. We can forecast eclipses centuries ahead, predict planetary alignments thousands of years into the future. But if 3I Atlas or its fragments return, it will prove that even our most certain predictions can be wrong. And wrong in science means not just surprise, it means discovery. For me, The most compelling question is not whether 3I Atlas will return, but what it means if it does. A returning hyperbolic comet would suggest that impossible is not as fixed as we thought. It would open the door to re-evaluating how matter behaves in interstellar journeys. It would hint at forces shaping cometary paths that we have not yet accounted for. It would, in essence, prove that the universe is far less stable than we imagine. And if the universe is less stable, then perhaps the sky is less silent. 3I Atlas may have been fragment, anomaly, mistake. Or it may be something more. Its story is not finished. Not because of what it did, but because of what it made us ask. If the comet returns, it will not just be another event, it will be a revelation that even what we thought was lost forever can circle back into our world, carrying questions we are still unprepared to answer. And so, I wait. Not for proof, not for certainty, but for possibility. Because possibility is enough. The real question is no longer if we will see 3I Atlas again, but when. What if the comet we believed was lost forever is not truly gone? What if 3I Atlas, the interstellar wanderer that sliced through our skies, is not just a fleeting visitor, but a messenger destined to return sooner than anyone expected? Astronomers insist that hyperbolic comets never come back. They blaze once, then vanish into eternal dark. But hidden inside its strange orbit, its eerie chemistry, and its unsettling brightness lies another possibility. What if the return of 3I Atlas is not accident, but intention designed to make us notice? When I first studied the orbit of 3I Atlas, the data was clear. A hyperbolic trajectory, a signature of escape. It entered our solar system at great speed, curved around the sun, and then accelerated away, too fast for gravity to reclaim. By every model, 3I Atlas was supposed to be gone forever, and yet, I cannot shake the thought that perhaps the story is not so simple. What if our equations, precise as they seem, are still incomplete? Space is not empty, it is alive with invisible forces. Galactic tides, distant stars, and even clouds of interstellar gas tug on wandering objects in ways subtle yet powerful. Over millions of years, such forces can bend trajectories that once seemed final. What looks like an escape path today may one day curve back into familiar skies. And if fragments of 3I Atlas broke apart as the evidence suggests, then not all of them may share the same fate. Some could already be on their way back. I cannot ignore the sequence that unsettles me most. 1 visitor could be chance, 2 could be coincidence, 3 begins to look like a pattern. Oumuamua in 2017, Borisov in 2019, and then 3I Atlas, 3 interstellar objects in less than a decade, after millennia without a single detection. Is this coincidence or choreography? If there is a rhythm hidden in these arrivals, then perhaps a return is not only possible, but inevitable. The anomalies of 3I Atlas deepen my unease. Its chemistry did not fit the model. Carbon dioxide overwhelmed its spectrum, drowning out water in ratios we had never recorded before. Its brightness rose too soon, at distances where comets should remain frozen. Its speed was higher than expected, almost reckless, and yet the nucleus endured the strain. Each anomaly could be explained away. Together, they felt deliberate, as though imbalance itself were the point. What if these anomalies were not noise, but signal? If that is the case, then a return would carry meaning far beyond physics. Return is never just physical, it is symbolic. To reappear after vanishing is to insist on being seen again. A comet that breaks the rules of orbit would no longer be mere debris. It would be message, and the message would be unmistakable. Pay attention. I remind myself constantly that science demands caution. We are pattern seekers by nature, often too eager to weave stories into silence. And yet, history teaches us that anomalies are not to be dismissed. Pulsars once seemed like alien signals until we discovered neutron stars. Fast radio bursts were once dismissed as interference until we found their astrophysical origins. Each time, what looked like error became doorway to discovery. Why should 3I Atlas be any different? Still, the question gnaws at me. What if its return is already in motion? What if a fragment is drifting inward now, too small to see, too quiet to measure, yet destined to flare into brightness at just the right moment? The possibility alone changes how I look at the sky. It makes me wonder if the universe speaks not in voices but in patterns, not in signals but in arrivals. Perhaps comets are the alphabet of a language we have not yet learned to read. Even if 3i Atlas never returns, the act of imagining its return has meaning. By questioning it, we reveal our own hunger for connection, our refusal to accept silence as final. In our wonder, we transform the comet into something more than ice and dust. We make it part of our story. And perhaps that is the first test whether we are willing to notice, willing to imagine, willing to search for meaning in anomaly. So, will 3i Atlas return? The official answer is no. The orbit is hyperbolic, the velocity too great, the math unyielding. But fragments do not obey rules so neatly. Galactic tides whisper across eons, nudging paths we cannot predict. And sometimes the truth is not in what equations tell us, but in what questions they force us to ask. Because perhaps the message is not in the comet at all, it is in us. In the way we study, the way we speculate, the way we fill silence with possibility. If 3i Atlas were to return, it would not only be an astronomical event, it would be a mirror showing us that we are a species that notices, that wonders, that refuses to let anomalies go unanswered. And so, as I step back from the telescope and let the data settle into silence, I cannot escape the feeling that this story is unfinished. Somewhere in the dark, perhaps a fragment has already turned back. And if it does, it will not only rewrite our science, it will remind us that silence itself can carry message. Until then, I wait. Because sometimes the greatest discoveries are not in what arrives, but in what dares to return. Every orbit tells a story, but no story is ever final. When astronomers declared 3i Atlas gone forever, they were speaking from the equations that had guided us faithfully for centuries. A hyperbolic orbit means escape, and escape means no return. Yet, the more I study the subtle forces that shape space, the more I begin to wonder, what if even hyperbolas are not as final as we think? Space is full of invisible hands, always pulling, always shaping. The sun is not the only actor in this cosmic play. Stars tug from afar, clouds of dust press ever so gently. Even the galaxy itself curves paths with tidal forces we barely understand. And when you look at an object as delicate and fragile as a comet, you realize its story is never written by one force alone. Take gravity, for example. It is relentless, but it is also patient. The pull of nearby stars, the whisper of unseen companions, the unseen mass of dark matter all bend trajectories over unimaginable timescales. If 3i Atlas passed close to another massive body after leaving our system, even a planet we have not yet discovered, its path could have shifted. A shift too small to notice at first, but enough to curve what looked like escape into what could one day be return. Comets fragment, that is their nature. Ice cracks, dust erupts, heat splits them apart into swarms of smaller bodies. And fragments do not all share the same destiny. Some are hurled outward, some are slowed, some fall into completely different orbits. What if a piece of 3i Atlas already broke free of the hyperbolic path and now drifts in silence back toward our sun? It would not be the comet itself that returns, but its child, its fragment, carrying the same anomalies, the same secrets, but on a path of return. Radiation is another hidden sculptor. The sun's light does more than warm, it pushes. Photons strike dust and ice, creating tiny but persistent nudges that over centuries reshape trajectories. The Yarkovsky effect, once dismissed as minor, can shift asteroids dramatically. On a comet as fragile as 3i Atlas, sunlight itself could be enough to alter destiny. Perhaps what once looked like escape was only a detour, with radiation guiding it back across eons. Then there are galactic tides. We forget that our solar system is not fixed, but riding on a spiral arm of the Milky Way. The galaxy itself curves and pulls, stretching orbits in ways we are only beginning to map. Over billions of years, these tides can change hyperbolas into arcs, arcs into ellipses. To us, it seems impossible. To the galaxy, it is inevitable. What if 3i Atlas is not gone, but already curving on a path so vast we cannot yet recognize it? And still, I cannot ignore the role of chance encounters. Space is vast, but it is not empty. Comets collide with dust clouds, with rogue asteroids, even with the faint drag of interstellar gas. Each encounter, however small, is another roll of the dice, and sometimes the dice fall in ways that defy probability. All it would take is one subtle interaction, one brush against a hidden force, to redirect 3I Atlas toward us again. But beyond physics, I must admit something unsettling. These forces may not just be natural. When I look at the anomalies of 3I Atlas, the carbon dioxide imbalance, the early brightness, the unsettling speed, I cannot shake the thought that perhaps they were not flaws at all. What if they were instructions? A design hidden in orbit and chemistry, meant to ensure that pieces of this comet survive, fracture, and return. Could the very act of breaking apart have been part of the plan? Science urges caution, but speculation whispers possibility. If 3I Atlas does return, it will not only rewrite our models of celestial mechanics, it will force us to ask if return was always the point. Imagine a messenger designed to appear, vanish, and then return when doubt had settled. The timing alone would be its message. Its return would not only surprise us, it would prove that we had been meant to notice. Still, I cannot let imagination run without restraint. The most likely explanation is always natural. Gravity, tides, radiation, fragmentation, these forces alone could explain a return, even if the odds are low. But even low odds are enough, because the cosmos is vast and time is long. Given enough fragments, enough encounters, enough nudges, the impossible begins to look inevitable. And that inevitability is what keeps me awake at night. If not 3I Atlas, then another. If not now, then later. Because what we thought was final may not be final at all. Return is always possible, even for those we believe gone forever. The sky has never promised us certainty, it has only ever given us questions. As I continue my research, I find myself staring not only at data, but at silence. Silence between arrivals. Silence between anomalies. Silence that feels less like absence and more like rhythm. Could the forces that bring comets back be more than physics? Could they be punctuation marks in a language we have not yet learned to translate? Perhaps the true question is not whether 3I Atlas can return, but whether we are ready when it does. If fragments fall back into our skies, will we dismiss them as coincidence? Or will we admit that sometimes return is the loudest message of all? And so I wait, charting possibilities, testing equations, listening to silence, because somewhere in the dark, a force we cannot yet name may already be guiding 3I Atlas or a piece of it home. And when it comes, it will not just be Comet, but confirmation that the universe has ways of speaking we have barely begun to hear. If 3I Atlas were to return, the impact would not only be astronomical, it would be philosophical. A hyperbolic comet coming back would shatter the foundations of celestial mechanics as we know them. Everything we teach about orbits, escape velocities, and cosmic dynamics would need rewriting, but beyond the math, beyond the science, lies something deeper. A return would change how we see ourselves. Science lives on certainty, yet certainty is fragile. For centuries, we have trusted that the equations of Newton and Einstein govern the heavens with perfect clarity. Comets orbit, planets revolve, stars burn and die, all predictable, all precise. And yet, if 3I Atlas, or even a fragment of it, were to return, our precision would be humbled. We would face the truth that our models are incomplete, and the cosmos is more flexible than we dared to admit. The return would ignite a scientific revolution. Teams across the globe would scramble to update orbital mechanics, to refine gravitational models, to rethink the forces that shape interstellar wanderers. It would be the equivalent of discovering a new law of motion hidden in plain sight. And with each discovery, we would realize something extraordinary. The universe still holds secrets large enough to overturn everything we thought we knew. But for me, as a scientist, the consequences extend beyond physics. Return carries meaning. It means the past is not finished, that what we thought was gone can come again. A comet that defies the rules of escape is more than anomaly, it is message. And that message would ripple beyond laboratories into culture, belief, and human imagination. Humanity has always tied meaning to the sky. Comets once inspired fear, omens of doom written in fire. Later, they became curiosities, icy archives of the solar system's birth. But if one were to vanish and then come back against all odds, it would carry a weight unlike any before. People would not just see ice and dust, they would see intention. They would see return as proof that the universe itself is trying to speak. Imagine the public reaction. Some would claim it as evidence of extraterrestrial design, a cosmic messenger engineered to remind us that we are not alone. Others would see it as divine, a sign written in the heavens. Scientists like myself would fight to ground it in physics, yet even we would feel the pull of symbolism, because deep down, return resonates with something primal, the belief that nothing is ever truly lost. And in that resonance, we would find both awe and fear. Awe, because it would confirm that the universe is alive with mystery. Fear, because it would remind us how little control we have. If a comet can break the rules we trusted, what else might bend beyond prediction? What other visitors could appear uninvited, rewriting our destiny without warning? Return would not only inspire wonder, it would demand humility. For science, the opportunity would be unparalleled. We would not waste the second chance. Telescopes would lock onto it, probes would be planned, missions designed to intercept and study every anomaly in its chemistry, every fluctuation in its brightness, every whisper in its spectrum would be scrutinized. We would seek answers not just to how it returned, but why it is different at all. And perhaps, in those answers, lies knowledge that could redefine our place in the cosmos. But what if the anomalies are not random? What if they are coded? If the chemistry of 3I Atlas carries ratios too deliberate to ignore, if its brightness pulses with rhythm, if its return is timed to coincide with moments of human awakening, could we dare to say the word message? Science hesitates, but the question lingers. What if comets are not only archives of the past, but messengers of the present? A returning comet would unite and divide us at the same time. Some would rally around the idea of cosmic communication. Others would dismiss it as coincidence amplified by imagination. But either way, it would spark dialogue that humanity has not faced in centuries. Questions about our place in the galaxy, about whether we are alone, about whether silence itself hides meaning. Return would become mirror, reflecting both our skepticism and our wonder. And then comes the most profound thought of all. Maybe the message is not in the comet, but in us. Maybe the act of watching, of wondering, of connecting the dots across anomalies is the real signal. Perhaps the test is not whether we can detect a message, but whether we are willing to imagine one. If so, then the return of 3I Atlas would prove less about cosmic intention and more about human curiosity. It would remind us that wonder itself is survival. As a scientist, I remind myself to stay cautious, to resist the lure of story when data is scarce. But I am also human, and I cannot deny the thrill of possibility. To live in a time when interstellar visitors cross our sky, to imagine that one could return, is to stand on the edge of discovery and myth at once. It is to realize that science and wonder are not enemies, they are companions. So what would 3I Atlas returning mean? It would mean rewriting textbooks. It would mean questioning physics. It would mean confronting the possibility of message, of choreography, of design. But most of all, it would mean rediscovering humility. Because, for all our equations and certainty, the sky still holds surprises vast enough to unmake them. And that, in itself, is the greatest gift the universe can give us. I end my nights with one thought. Maybe the return is already happening. Maybe a fragment is curving back, too faint to see yet, but destined to blaze into our awareness. And when it does, we will face not only the comet, but ourselves, our science, our culture, our imagination, all tested by a simple truth. Sometimes what is gone is not gone at all. Until that day, I watch the skies with equal parts caution and hope. Because the return of 3I Atlas would not just be a comet story, it would be ours. Every discovery leaves us with data, but some discoveries leave us with riddles. 3I Atlas was one of those riddles. Its orbit, its chemistry, its behavior, all carried anomalies too strange to ignore. And the more I examine those anomalies, the more I find myself asking, what if this comet was not just a fragment of ice and dust, but a carrier of information? Science resists the temptation to leap toward meaning, but anomalies demand attention. In the case of 3I Atlas, the imbalance of gases was striking. Instead of water dominating, as in most comets, Carbon dioxide overwhelmed the spectrum. The ratio was so unusual that some colleagues dismissed it as noise, contamination, or error. But what if imbalance itself was intentional? If you wanted to make something stand out in the silence of space, you would not follow the rules, you would break them. And perhaps that is exactly what 3i Atlas did. Brightness, too, became part of the puzzle. Comets flare as they approach the sun, but 3i Atlas brightened too soon, at distances where it should have remained frozen. It was as though it wanted to be seen earlier than expected, revealing itself before the curtain had lifted. Some said it was coincidence, others blamed unusual chemistry. But to me, it felt like announcement. A declaration that this was no ordinary wanderer. What if the brightness was not accident, but beacon? Speed is another anomaly that refuses to leave my thoughts. 3. Atlas travelled with velocity too great for a fragile nucleus to survive. Yet it endured, resisting the breakup that should have destroyed it. How does an object made of ice withstand such strain? What if its durability was not natural but designed? If survival was part of the plan, then the comet itself becomes more than debris, it becomes vessel. A vessel built to deliver something across unimaginable distances. If so, then the question becomes clear. What was it carrying? Comets are archives, frozen relics of their origin systems. Inside, their dust lie molecules, isotopes, and clues about the worlds they came from. But in 3i Atlas, perhaps those molecules were more than fossils. What if they were patterns? Ratios that encode information, chemistry arranged as cipher. To us, it looks like imbalance. To another mind, it could look like code. The orbit itself may have been part of the message. A hyperbolic trajectory is supposed to mean escape, a one-time pass. But what if the path was chosen precisely because it defies expectation? To appear, vanish, and then perhaps return is a rhythm humans cannot ignore. If you wanted to get the attention of a pattern-seeking species, you would design motion that breaks their rules. And 3i Atlas did exactly that. Its orbit could be less about destination and more about punctuation. Numbers whisper in every anomaly. The timing of its appearance, the ratio of gases, the intervals of its brightness, all can be seen as coincidence, but if aligned, they begin to resemble structure. A scientist must resist the temptation to impose meaning, yet I cannot shake the feeling that these anomalies line up too cleanly to dismiss. What if the numbers themselves are the language, the comet a carrier of cosmic mathematics? After all, numbers are the one tongue any intelligence would understand. Skeptics remind me that patterns can deceive. Humans have always seen constellations where there were only stars, omens where there were only eclipses. We are built to find order in chaos, even when none exists. Yet, I would argue, sometimes what looks like chaos is choreography. If we do not test the hypothesis of message, we risk ignoring the one signal that was meant to reach us. Silence does not mean absence. It sometimes means we are failing to listen. So how do we listen? By treating anomalies not as errors, but as possibilities. By examining ratios as though they might be deliberate, orbits as though they might be structured, brightness as though it might be timed. It does not mean abandoning science, it means expanding it. If we are willing to ask, what if, then even silence can become data, and perhaps 3i Atlas was silence shaped into form. A messenger that speaks not in words, but in patterns. The implications of such a message are staggering. If a comet carried information, then it would mean we are not the only ones who encode meaning into matter. It would mean another intelligence, somewhere across the void, chose comets as couriers. And what better courier could there be? Durable, natural-looking, able to survive eons of travel, yet simple enough to hide in plain sight. If you wanted to send archives across galaxies, you would send them in comets. And so the thought haunts me. Maybe the hidden message of 3i Atlas was never in its chemistry, its orbit, or its brightness. Maybe the message was in the act itself, in its arrival, in its anomalies, in its possibility of return. A comet that should not have been noticed was noticed. A comet that should not return may return. Perhaps the code was never in the comet, it was in the human reaction to it. Our speculation, our curiosity, our refusal to dismiss anomaly as accident. Maybe we are the code being tested. This is why I cannot let 3i Atlas go. It is gone from the skies, yes, but not from my thoughts. Its data still whispers with unfinished business. Its anomalies refuse to fade into background noise. And deep down, I believe its story is not over. Because if silence can carry message, then absence can carry promise. And perhaps one day soon, that promise will return to blaze across our skies again. If 3i Atlas carried a hidden message, then the consequences for humanity would be profound. It would not only be a discovery of science, it would be a discovery of ourselves. To realize that information had been placed inside a comet would mean that we are not alone, and more than that, it would mean someone, or something, chose to speak to us. The very act of a message changes the universe from silent to alive. The first consequence would be scientific revolution. Every telescope, every laboratory, every probe would turn its attention to decoding the anomalies. We would begin to treat comets not just as archives of the past, but as possible libraries of communication. The chemistry of 3i Atlas would be reanalyzed, its ratios tested not only for natural explanation, but for intentional structure. For the first time in history, science would confront the possibility that data itself might be designed. But with discovery comes conflict. Not everyone would agree on what the message means, or even if it exists. Some would claim the anomalies are coincidence, random noise mistaken for signal. Others would argue that the message proves intelligent design, that it is evidence of extraterrestrial civilization. Religions would see signs of the divine. Governments would fear hidden agendas. Scientists would demand patience and caution. And in that clash, the greatest challenge would not be the comet, but ourselves. Humanity has always been divided by interpretation of the unknown. Ancient eclipses were omens of doom to some, cycles of nature to others. Now, a returning comet with strange chemistry could ignite the same divide on a global scale. Some would panic, others would celebrate, many would refuse to believe. The message, whatever it was, would become a mirror reflecting our fears, our hopes, and our fractures. If the message was real, the second consequence would be unity. For all our differences, nothing unites humanity like the realization that we are not alone. Wars would pause, if only for a moment. Borders would blur beneath a shared sky. Scientists from rival nations would share data, collaborate on missions, and pool resources. Because the cosmos does not speak to one country, it speaks to all. And if 3i Atlas carried words written in light and chemistry, then the answer belongs to everyone. The third consequence would be transformation of philosophy. Humanity would no longer be able to see itself as isolated, accidental, or alone. The message would redefine who we are in the cosmic story. We would go from species of Earth to listeners of the stars, and with that shift comes responsibility to interpret carefully, to act wisely, to prove that we are worthy of the dialogue. But dialogue is dangerous, because meaning is fragile. What if we misinterpret the message? What if what we see as welcome is warning? What if what we read as code is accident? The danger of searching for meaning is that we may impose our own onto silence. And yet, to not search would be worse. To ignore anomaly is to close the door on possibility. Humanity would face the tension between caution and curiosity, between fear of mistake and hunger for discovery. The fourth consequence would be technological ambition. If comets can carry messages, then we will try to answer. We would build probes designed not just to study, but to send. We would attempt to encode our own anomalies into dust and ice, to place our own messages into the silence. Because once you realize the cosmos might be speaking, you cannot help but speak back. The question is not only whether we can read the message, but whether we dare to reply. And then comes the deepest consequence of all, self-reflection. Because whether the message was intentional or not, our reaction reveals who we are. We are a species that cannot ignore anomaly. We are a species that longs for connection, that hopes silence is not the final word. If the message was real, it would prove that curiosity is not weakness, it is the essence of survival. Some might fear the implications. If another intelligence placed the message, then they are ahead of us, capable of shaping orbits, coding chemistry, and enduring across eons. What does that make us, children fumbling with our first questions, or inheritors of a greater dialogue? Fear would say vulnerability, wonder would say invitation, and in the space between those two lies the future of how we respond. Even absence would be consequence. If we never decode the message, if we never confirm its origin, it will still change us, because the act of searching, the act of asking, the act of wondering whether meaning exists in silence will shift our perspective. It will remind us that not knowing is not failure, it is invitation. Invitation to keep looking, to keep asking, to keep believing that the universe has more to reveal. So what would happen if 3I Atlas returned with a message hidden in its dust? Science would expand, philosophy would shift, humanity would argue, and curiosity would ignite. We would be tested not by the comet itself, but by how we respond. And perhaps that is the true purpose of the message, not to give us answers, but to see if we are ready to ask better questions. I imagine sometimes what the message might say. It may not be words, not symbols, not anything we would recognize. It could be ratios, orbits, chemistry, or rhythm. It may not tell us who they are, but rather test who we are. Because in decoding, in debating, in searching, we reveal ourselves. Perhaps the message was never meant to change us. It was meant to show us that we were already ready to change. And that thought is both humbling and exhilarating. Because if 3I Atlas carried a message, then the universe has already spoken once. The question now is not whether it will speak again, but whether we will listen. We always assume the universe speaks to us. Every anomaly, every signal, every flicker in the sky, we cannot help but imagine it is directed at humanity. But what if the message of 3I Atlas was never meant for us? What if we are not the audience, but the bystanders, accidental witnesses to a dialogue unfolding across the cosmos? This thought unsettles me more than any other, because if the comet carried a hidden message, it is natural to assume it was placed there for intelligent life. But intelligent life may not mean us. The galaxy is vast, the timescales enormous. What if the intended recipient has already come and gone? Or worse, what if the true audience has yet to arrive, and we are only eavesdropping on a conversation not ours to hear? The first possibility is chilling. The message was a relic. Perhaps it was sent millions of years ago, aimed at a civilization that no longer exists. If so, then 3I Atlas is nothing more than a letter to the dead. We have intercepted it by accident, like finding a bottle on a shore with instructions for a people who vanished before we ever walked the earth. If that is true, then the message is not meant to change us, it is meant to haunt us. The second possibility is even stranger. The message is still in transit. Maybe the timing of its arrival here was not intentional. Perhaps Earth was never on the delivery route at all. The comet could be carrying information for another system, another world, another intelligence still waiting in the darkness. If so, then we are thieves reading someone else's mail, intruders in a dialogue that was never ours. The third possibility unsettles me most. The message is ongoing. Imagine if 3I Atlas is only one courier in a sequence of couriers, part of an interstellar chain delivering archives across time. If Oumuamua, Borisov, and 3I Atlas were part of a pattern, then perhaps each was a node in a network we cannot yet map. We may have intercepted one link, but the conversation is larger, broader, spanning eons, and humanity is simply an accidental observer. If the message is not for us, then what role do we play? Perhaps none at all. Perhaps we are ants stumbling across a signal designed for giants. But perhaps our very interception is part of the design. What if the message was built to test whoever notices it first? Not as a greeting, but as a filter, a way to distinguish those who are curious enough to see meaning in anomaly from those who are not. If so, then by noticing, we have already entered the dialogue, whether it was meant for us or not. The consequences of realizing we are not the audience would be profound. It would mean that humanity is not central, not chosen, not even expected. We would be eavesdroppers, listening in on whispers meant for others. That shift in perspective would shake the foundation of philosophy and faith alike. For centuries we have imagined ourselves as the receivers of any cosmic message. But what if we are not listeners, only witnesses? As a scientist, I must admit that nature itself often works this way. Signals cross boundaries all the time, received by those for whom they were never intended. Whale songs cross oceans, heard by species that cannot understand them. Radio waves leak from planets, spilling into space, intercepted by no one. And sometimes, a signal outlives its sender, traveling long after the civilization that created it has vanished. Why should comets be different? If 3i Atlas was not meant for us, does that lessen its significance? I do not believe so. Accidental messages can still change us. Even if the comet's anomalies were aimed at another species, the fact that we noticed them matters. We are still shaped by what we see, still transformed by what we imagine. Perhaps the true measure of a message is not its audience, but its effect. And the effect of 3i Atlas is undeniable. It has made us wonder. Yet, I cannot ignore the possibility that the intended recipient may still be here. Not here as in Earth, but here as in nearby another intelligence sharing our galaxy, still waiting for the signal to arrive. If that is the case, then we are not alone in watching the skies. Somewhere, another species may already have received the same anomalies, the same chemistry, the same brightness, and recognized it for what it is. We may not be the target, but we may not be the only observers. The most haunting thought of all is this: maybe we were never supposed to know. If the message was not for us, then our discovery of it may be accident, even trespass. What if reading it has consequences? Perhaps the signal was never meant to be interpreted outside its true audience, and our attempt to decode it will bring misunderstanding, or worse, danger. Curiosity may be survival, but it may also be risk. Still, I cannot turn away. Whether the message was meant for us or not, it is here, it is real, and it demands attention. To ignore it would be to deny the very essence of science. We may not be the intended recipients, but we are the ones who found it, and sometimes being witness is enough. So what if 3i Atlas was never meant for us? Then it still matters. It matters because we saw it. It matters because it changed us. It matters because it reminded us that the universe is alive with communication, even if we are not the addressee. Perhaps that is the ultimate truth. Not every message is ours, but every message teaches us to listen, and maybe listening itself is the point. Perhaps the universe does not care who the message is for. Perhaps it only cares that someone is listening, and in that case, by hearing what was never ours, we have already passed the test. The greatest danger of a message is not in its content, but in its interpretation. If 3i Atlas carried anomalies that hint at meaning, then the risk is not only whether we can decode them, it is whether we decode them correctly. A single misinterpretation could shift curiosity into fear, wonder into panic, science into conflict. And that danger is not theoretical. Human history is filled with moments where misunderstanding the unknown led to disaster. We are creatures of pattern, and patterns are double-edged. On one hand, they drive discovery. We saw order in the motions of planets and uncovered gravity. We studied flickers of light in the night sky and discovered pulsars. But we also saw omens in eclipses, curses in comets, and warnings in stars. Our gift for seeing meaning is also our vulnerability. And with 3i Atlas, the line between discovery and delusion may be perilously thin. If we mistake natural anomaly for deliberate signal, the consequences could spiral. Imagine entire communities believing the comet carried prophecy, not chemistry. Religions could fracture, governments could weaponize the story, and science could lose credibility. Already, whispers circulate whenever anomalies appear, claims of alien design, secret warnings, cosmic tests. One wrong interpretation could ignite global hysteria. The opposite danger is just as great, ignoring the signal entirely. If 3i Atlas truly carried information, dismissing it as coincidence would be a tragedy. We would miss a dialogue that might never come again. To turn away from anomaly because it feels inconvenient is to close the door on discovery, and history has shown us that silence often hides revelation. Pulsars, fast radio bursts, even background radiation, all once dismissed as noise, later proved to be windows into truth. What if we silence 3i Atlas before it has spoken? There is also the danger of projection. What if we impose human fears, desires, or myths onto the comet? If we see it as omen, it becomes omen. If we see it as threat, it becomes threat. Our interpretations could reshape global behavior, driving choices not guided by data, but by belief. In that sense, the danger lies not in the comet, but in us. Even science is not immune. In our hunger for meaning, We could force data to fit narratives it does not support. We could cherry-pick anomalies, elevate coincidence to signal, and blind ourselves to natural explanations. The risk of confirmation bias is real, wanting a message so badly that we invent one. And if that happens, we turn science into story, abandoning the discipline that makes discovery possible. But the greatest danger is assuming intention where there may be none. If 3i Atlas was purely natural, then reading it as message risks distracting us from real science. We would spend resources chasing ghosts, while ignoring the genuine lessons comets can teach about origins, chemistry, and evolution of systems. Worse, we could shape generations of thought around a fiction, and in that fiction, we could lose sight of truth. Yet, I cannot dismiss the opposite risk, assuming silence when there is signal. If we refuse to test the possibility of message, then we risk missing the most important discovery in human history. It is a paradox that haunts me daily. Both belief and disbelief carry danger. Believe too easily, and we drown in delusion. Doubt too rigidly, and we silence the universe. And so the real danger lies in balance. We must hold both possibilities natural and intentional, without rushing to either. We must test anomalies without worshipping them, and question signals without dismissing them. That is the discipline of science, to balance skepticism with wonder. And yet, even balance is fragile when the world is watching. Public reaction may not wait for certainty. A single bold claim, an alien message, a cosmic warning could spread faster than data can catch it. In the age of instant communication, interpretation is no longer controlled by scientists. Anyone with conviction can shape the narrative, and once belief takes hold, no amount of evidence can undo it. That is the true danger. Not just misinterpretation, but misinterpretation amplified by millions. If 3i Atlas ever returns, the danger will multiply. A second arrival will not be seen as accident, but as proof. No one will believe coincidence twice. And in that moment, the message, whether real or imagined, will no longer belong to science. It will belong to humanity's imagination. And imagination is a force more powerful than fact. This is why I fear misinterpretation more than silence. Because silence can be studied, silence can be tested, but misinterpretation cannot be undone. Once the world believes a comet is omen, or threat, or messenger, the consequences will follow, regardless of truth. Wars could be justified, ideologies reshaped, destinies rewritten, all on the back of a misread signal. And yet, despite the danger, I cannot stop listening. Because what if the message is real? What if silence is not silence? The risk of misinterpretation is great, but the risk of ignoring is greater. The greatest discoveries always carry danger, because discovery itself destabilizes certainty. 3. Atlas may be the most dangerous kind of discovery, a question without a safe answer. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with caution, discipline, and humility. We must test, we must measure, we must resist the lure of story without proof. But we must also keep asking, because the danger of misinterpretation does not excuse the danger of indifference. Humanity cannot afford to stop listening, even when the message is unclear. Perhaps that is the true lesson of 3i Atlas. Not that the message is real, or false, or ours, or not ours, but that meaning itself is dangerous. And danger is the price of curiosity. We must accept that risk, or turn away from the stars, and to turn away would be the greater loss. If 3i Atlas, or even a fragment of it, were to return, humanity would face a choice unlike any before. Do we treat it as anomaly, as accident, as mere curiosity, or do we treat it as signal, as messenger, as test? What we do next will define not just our science, but our species. The first step must be preparation. We cannot afford to be caught by surprise. If a fragment reappears, we must have the tools ready, telescopes tuned, instruments sharpened, missions prepared to intercept. A second chance is a gift the cosmos rarely offers. To waste it through hesitation would be unforgivable. The second step must be discipline. If 3i Atlas returns, the world will erupt with theories, fears, and stories. Some will claim it is alien, others will call it divine. Governments will scramble for control, and conspiracy will flood the public before data does. We must ensure science remains the anchor in the storm. That means rigorous testing, careful communication, and honesty about what we know and what we do not. Because in the absence of truth, imagination will fill the void, and not always wisely. The third step must be collaboration. No nation can claim ownership of a comet, nor of a message. If 3i Atlas returns, it is not America's comet, or China's comet, or Europe's comet, it is humanity's comet, and its secrets belong to all of us. If we compete, we will fracture. If we collaborate, we will advance. That means shared data, joint missions, and open science on a global scale, because the sky speaks to Earth, not to borders. The fourth step must be humility. If the comet carries information, we must not assume we understand it. A message may not be written in ways we expect it, may not even be message at all. To leap to conclusions risks delusion. We must accept that silence may remain silence, and anomaly may remain anomaly. Yet we must still study, because wonder without caution is fantasy, and caution without wonder is blindness. If 3i Atlas returns, the public will look to scientists for answers. That is both an honor and a burden. We must speak clearly, without exaggeration, without false certainty. To say we don't know is not weakness, it is honesty. And honesty is the foundation of trust. If we lose trust, then the comet's return will not unite humanity. It will divide us further. What we do with the story matters as much as the comet itself. There will be pressure to act beyond science. Some will want to send probes immediately to chase the comet across the void. Others will want to signal back, to reply before we even understand what we are answering. These are dangerous impulses. Curiosity must not outpace caution. To send before we understand could risk misunderstanding or worse, exposure we are not ready for. We must first learn to read before we dare to speak, and yet we cannot remain silent forever. If the anomalies do prove to be intentional, if the comet truly carries code, then humanity will face the most important decision in its history, whether to respond. A reply would mark the moment we declare ourselves to the cosmos. It would say, "We are here, we have noticed, and we choose to speak." That moment must not be rushed. It must be chosen with unity, wisdom, and humility. But perhaps the most important step is inward, because even if the comet carries no message, its return is still a mirror. It shows us who we are, a species that looks to the sky and refuses to accept silence. Whether signal or accident, 3i Atlas has already spoken because it has made us wonder, and in wonder, we reveal our greatest strength. So what should humanity do if 3i Atlas returns? We should prepare with science, speak with honesty, act with caution, collaborate without borders, and approach with humility. We must treat it not as omen or threat, but as opportunity. An opportunity to test ourselves, to advance our science, to deepen our unity, and to prove that we are listeners worthy of dialogue. Because even if the comet carries no message, our reaction to it will become our message to the cosmos. The truth is that we may never know for certain. 3i Atlas may never return. Its fragments may never cross our skies again. But to prepare for that possibility is not wasted effort. It is investment in our own growth. For in preparing, we build better science, stronger cooperation, and deeper humility. And those are gifts we will need, whether or not the comet speaks again. I often wonder if that is the real test. Not the comet itself, not its anomalies, not its possible code, but us, how we respond, how we prepare, how we imagine. Perhaps the universe does not send messages to be decoded, but situations to be endured, and our reaction, our science, our caution, our wonder becomes the answer. So if 3i Atlas returns, my hope is not that it brings clarity, but that it brings reflection, that we see in it the reminder that we are fragile, curious, and united by the skies above. That we realize our greatest strength is not in what we know, but in what we are willing to ask. Because return is never just event, it is invitation. And the invitation of 3i Atlas is simple. Will you listen? The greatest impact of 3i Atlas may not be scientific, but psychological. A comet's return is more than a celestial event. It is a cultural mirror. It forces us to confront how we think, how we fear, and how we dream. Even the possibility of return changes us. reshaping our imagination long before the comet ever reappears. Humans are storytellers by nature. We weave meaning into eclipses, patterns into stars, and omens into comets. 3. Atlas has already become more than ice and dust. It has become symbol. Some see it as a messenger, others as warning, others still as test. The comet itself may be silent, but the stories we tell about it are loud, and those stories will shape how we live under its shadow. For some, the possibility of return will spark wonder. They will look at the sky with renewed curiosity, seeing in it proof that the universe is alive with mystery. Children will ask new questions, dream new dreams, imagine futures among the stars. Wonder can inspire, and inspiration can shape generations. If 3i Atlas makes us more curious, then it has already transformed us. But for others, the possibility will spark fear. Comets have long carried reputations as harbingers of doom. A returning comet that defies natural law will be seen by some as omen, as threat, as danger. Fear spreads faster than wonder, and fear can divide us. The danger is not in the comet itself, but in how humans respond to what they do not understand. Culturally, 3i Atlas will become a canvas for belief. Religions may see it as divine message, a sign written in the heavens. Philosophers will debate whether it proves we are not alone, or whether it shows we invent meaning where none exists. Artists will paint it, writers will mythologize it, musicians will sing of it. Every culture will project its own story onto the comet, and in doing so, 3i Atlas becomes less a physical object and more a shared symbol of humanity's search for meaning. The psychological weight of waiting for return cannot be ignored. Living with the knowledge that something impossible might happen unsettles the mind. It is anticipation without timeline, expectation without certainty. Some will find it thrilling, others unbearable. Uncertainty is fertile ground for both imagination and anxiety, and so, even silence from the skies becomes active force, an unspoken pressure shaping how we live, dream, and fear. The media will amplify that pressure. Headlines will frame 3i Atlas as omen, mystery, or even threat. Speculation will become currency, and fear will sell faster than patience. Every anomaly in the sky will be tied to the comet, every streak of light will be mistaken for its return. Psychology thrives on narrative, and narrative often thrives on exaggeration, and in that storm of noise, truth will struggle to hold. But perhaps the greatest cultural impact will be unity. Even in disagreement, even in fear, 3i Atlas is something we all share. No one owns the sky, it belongs to all of us. The possibility of return will remind us that humanity is one species, bound beneath the same heavens. And in a world divided by borders, politics, and belief, a single comet can become common ground. As a scientist, I must confront my own psychology too. Data demands objectivity, but I am not immune to awe. When I think of 3i Atlas possibly returning, I feel both thrill and dread. Thrill at what we might discover, dread at how easily misinterpretation could spiral. Science is done by humans, and humans are shaped by stories. Even as we measure, we cannot help but imagine, and imagination is both gift and danger. If the comet never returns, the psychological impact will still remain, because in wondering, we have already been changed. We now look at the sky differently, less as backdrop, more as conversation. Every comet that follows will carry new weight. Every anomaly will raise new questions. 3. Atlas has planted an idea that will not fade. The universe may not be silent after all, and that is the true cultural shift. For millennia, we have seen the cosmos as stage, vast and indifferent. But if even one comet carries message, then the stage becomes dialogue. Humanity becomes not spectator, but participant. And the thought of participation changes how we tell our stories, how we see ourselves, how we imagine our place in the vastness. Of course, imagination comes with responsibility. If we let fear dominate, the comet becomes omen. If we let wonder lead, it becomes inspiration. The story we choose to tell will shape generations. That choice is ours, not the comet's. Because while 3i Atlas may carry mystery, the meaning we give it is ultimately human. So what is the psychological and cultural impact of living under its possibility? It is transformation. It is the stretching of imagination, the stirring of fear, the weaving of myth, the call to wonder It is both burden and gift. Burden, because uncertainty weighs heavy. Gift, because wonder expands us. And in that expansion, we glimpse the best of what humanity can be. Perhaps that is the real message. Not in gas ratios, not in orbits, not in brightness, but in the mirror the comet holds up to us. It shows us that we are creatures who cannot help but seek meaning. That even silence will not silence our curiosity. And in that hunger for meaning lies our truest strength. So even if 3i Atlas never returns, it has already changed us. Because now, every eye that lifts to the stars carries the same question. What if it comes back? And that question alone is enough to shape our culture, our imagination, and our future. The legacy of 3i Atlas does not depend on whether it returns. Some discoveries change us, not because of what they are, but because of what they make us imagine. Even if the comet never reappears, it has already left an imprint on science, on culture, and on the human mind. That imprint may prove to be its true legacy. In science, 3i Atlas has already expanded our boundaries. Its anomalies forced us to reconsider models of chemistry, brightness, and orbital behavior. It showed us that interstellar visitors do not always fit neatly into the categories we expect. By defying those categories, it pushed us to refine our methods, sharpen our tools, and broaden our theories. Its data will continue to shape cometary science for decades, even without a second sighting. But the legacy goes beyond data. Science thrives on anomaly, and 3i Atlas was a comet of anomalies. It reminded us that the unknown is not weakness, it is opportunity. Each unanswered question becomes seed for future research, future missions, future generations of scientists who will ask what we could not. Its mysteries will continue to echo in research long after the comet itself has vanished. For culture, the legacy is just as profound. Comets have always been woven into myth. 3i Atlas carries a modern mythology, a story not of fear, but of possibility. It has become a symbol of return, of hidden messages, of the idea that the universe itself may be alive with communication. Even if silence follows, the story will remain, and stories shape us just as much as discoveries do. The legacy of 3i Atlas is also psychological. It has changed how we see the sky. Before, comets were curiosities, archives of ice and dust. After 3i Atlas, they are potential messengers. Every future comet will now carry a second layer of meaning, the possibility that it, too, hides anomalies worth listening to. That shift in perception will not fade, because once curiosity is awakened, it cannot be unlearned. The legacy will also live in our technologies. To study 3i Atlas, astronomers refined instruments, sharpened surveys, and tested new methods of detection. Those advances will not vanish with the comet. They will continue to improve how we see the cosmos. The comet may be gone, but the tools it forced us to build will open new discoveries, perhaps ones even more extraordinary. Sometimes the legacy of an anomaly is not the anomaly itself, but the doors it forces us to open. Even failure to confirm a message is legacy. If 3i Atlas carried no signal, no code, no deliberate anomaly, then it still tested our imagination. It revealed our hunger for meaning, our fear of silence, our tendency to see pattern in chaos. That self-revelation matters, because knowing how we respond to anomaly teaches us as much about ourselves as anomaly teaches us about the cosmos. The comet may fade, but the mirror it held up to us will remain. In the long run, 3i Atlas will also live as a turning point. Just as Oumuamua marked the first interstellar object we ever recorded, 3i Atlas will be remembered as one of the first that made us ask if visitors might carry more than matter. It opened the door to questions we were not asking before. And in history, turning points are often remembered, not for answers, but for the new questions they left behind. Its legacy will not belong only to scientists. Artists will paint its return, writers will imagine its message, musicians will turn its silence into song. In culture, 3i Atlas will outlive its orbit, because myths do not need return to survive. They need only imagination, and imagination has already claimed it. Even if the sky never shows it again, humanity will keep telling its story. As a scientist, I find comfort in this, because legacy is not measured in certainty, it is measured in effect. 3. Eye Atlas has already shifted how we see, how we think, how we wonder. That shift is permanent. Its legacy is not in proof, but in possibility. And possibility endures far longer than certainty. Perhaps that is the comet's true gift. Not return, not message, not even anomaly, but reminder. Reminder that the universe is not finished, that silence may hide rhythm, that even a fleeting visitor can leave eternal trace. We are not the same species we were before we noticed Three-Eye Atlas. We are more curious, more cautious, more awake to the idea that the cosmos may be larger in meaning than in size. So even if Three-Eye Atlas never comes back, it has already returned in us. It returns every time we ask if silence is signal. It returns every time we wonder if anomalies are code. It returns in our stories, our science, our search for meaning. Its dust may be gone, but its legacy lives on in human thought. And thought is the one thing that truly lasts. That is the long-term legacy of Three-Eye Atlas. Not ice, not orbit, not even return, but transformation. Transformation of science into deeper questions. Transformation of culture into shared wonder. Transformation of humanity into listeners. And that transformation does not need the comet to reappear, because once curiosity is lit, it burns forever. The way we remember Three-Eye Atlas may matter more than what it truly was. Because history is not written by data alone, it is written by stories. Future generations will not only study its orbit, they will inherit the myths we create around it. And those myths may outlast the science itself. Some will remember it as myth. For them, Three-Eye Atlas will join the long line of celestial omens that shaped human imagination. It will be spoken of as the comet that defied the rules, the wanderer that carried whispers of message. Even if science one day proves it was only ice and dust, myth does not require proof, it requires wonder. And wonder Three-Eye Atlas has already given. Others will remember it as science. They will see it as one of the first interstellar objects that forced us to refine our models, sharpen our instruments, and rethink our assumptions. In textbooks, it will appear as case study, the comet of anomalies. Its chemistry, its brightness, its velocity, all will be taught as puzzles that shaped future discoveries. For scientists yet unborn, Three-Eye Atlas will be a lesson in how anomalies drive progress. But some will remember it as the beginning of something greater. If future visitors follow, if the anomalies align into pattern, if fragments return, then Three-Eye Atlas will be remembered not as isolated mystery, but as first chapter of a dialogue that began with silence and anomaly, but ended with recognition. It may be remembered as the moment humanity first suspected the universe was speaking. The truth is that memory is selective. Future generations will not inherit our debates in full. They will inherit the stories we choose to pass on. If we frame Three-Eye Atlas as omen, it will remain omen. If we frame it as messenger, it will remain messenger. What survives is not only the data, but the interpretation. And interpretation is always a choice. As a scientist, I hope we pass on both the science and the wonder, because to strip away wonder is to leave only numbers, and to strip away science is to leave only myth. Three-Eye Atlas deserves to be remembered as both a comet that expanded knowledge and ignited imagination. That dual legacy would honor not only the comet, but the humanity that studied it. For future generations, Three-Eye Atlas will also serve as reminder that anomalies are not to be dismissed, that silence may hide rhythm, that curiosity is survival. It will remind them that science begins not with certainty, but with questions. And the question of Three-Eye Atlas, what if it returns? What if it carried message is powerful enough to outlive the comet itself? If more interstellar visitors come, Three-Eye Atlas will gain new context. It will be remembered alongside Oumuamua and Borisov as part of a sequence, the early signs of a galactic dialogue. It may be seen as the comet that prepared us, that taught us to listen. And if one day true signal is confirmed, Three-Eye Atlas will be remembered as foreshadowing the whisper before the voice. But if no other visitors ever come, its memory will be different. It will stand alone, strange and unrepeatable, a singular mystery. In that case, it will be remembered as enigma proof that the universe still keeps secrets it never intends to reveal. And perhaps that legacy is just as powerful, because mystery, too, is a gift. The cultural memory of Three-Eye I-Atlas will evolve with time. What we call anomaly, they may call design. What we call silence, they may call message. Future generations will reinterpret the data through their own lens, their own fears, their own hopes. Just as we turned ancient eclipses into omens, they will turn our anomalies into meaning. And in that sense, 3i Atlas will never stop changing, because memory itself is alive. I sometimes wonder what a child centuries from now will think when they read about 3i Atlas. Will they see it as turning point, as mystery, as myth? Will they look at the sky and feel the same wonder we felt, knowing that once a comet made the world pause to ask what if? Or will they dismiss it as artifact of a time when we reached for meaning in noise? The answer depends not on the comet, but on us. Our responsibility, then, is to frame 3i Atlas wisely, not as proof of aliens, not as omen of doom, not as certainty, but as possibility. Because possibility is the legacy that endures. It allows science to grow, culture to adapt, imagination to thrive. If we give 3i Atlas to the future as symbol of possibility, then its story will never die. In the end, the comet itself is transient. Its dust will fade, its fragments will scatter, its orbit will vanish into the dark. But legacy is not measured in presence, it is measured in impact. And the impact of 3i Atlas is already secured. It made us wonder if silence is message, if anomaly is signal, if the universe itself is dialogue. That wonder will outlast the comet. So how will future generations remember 3i Atlas? As myth, as science, as first chapter, or as enigma? Perhaps as all of these at once. Because the truth is, memory does not need certainty, it needs meaning. And 3i Atlas has already given us meaning enough to last lifetimes. That is its legacy. Not return, not message, not proof, but the ability to remind us that even fleeting visitors can echo forever. And in that echo, the future will still hear its name. Every anomaly tempts us with a choice. Dismiss it as chance or treat it as pattern. With 3i Atlas, that choice becomes unavoidable. Was it a comet of quirks, an accident of chemistry and orbit, or was it the first sign of something larger unfolding? The answer to that question may shape not only our science, but our story as a species. Anomalies in isolation can be explained away. A strange orbit may be coincidence. An unusual chemistry may be contamination. A brightness flare may be error. But anomalies that stack begin to demand attention. With 3i Atlas, we saw orbit, chemistry, brightness, and speed, all refusing to fit the mold. That is not noise, it is structure. And structure is where patterns begin. The first pattern is in timing. For millennia, no interstellar visitors were ever recorded. Then in just a few years, we saw Oumuamua, Borisov, and 3i Atlas. 3 anomalies, 3 visitors, 3 mysteries. To call that coincidence is to ignore rhythm. The sky does not offer such sequences lightly. If there is timing, there may be intention. The second pattern is in behavior. Oumuamua tumbled strangely, reflecting light in ways that suggested something more than rock. Borisov appeared more conventional, but still bore differences. Then came 3i Atlas, combining speed, chemistry, and brightness in ways that defied expectation. 3 visitors, 3 variations, each one stretching our understanding further. Variation itself can be message, as if each was designed to show a different face of possibility. The third pattern is in consequence. Each arrival has left us more unsettled than the last. Oumuamua made us ask if anomalies could mean technology. Borisov reminded us that the galaxy is not empty, but full of wandering fragments. And 3i Atlas made us wonder if return and message were possible. Together, they do not just teach us science, they escalate our imagination. That escalation feels less like randomness and more like sequence. If these visitors are part of larger pattern, then what comes next? Do we wait for a fourth? Do we prepare for repetition? Patterns do not end with 3. They build, they echo, they expand. If 3i Atlas was not isolated, then its anomalies may be only one piece of a wider code, one note in a cosmic rhythm we are only beginning to hear. Perhaps the pattern is not comet, but chorus. Of course, science demands caution. To leap from anomaly to pattern without proof is to risk delusion. History is full of patterns we invented that never existed: constellations, omens, numerology. But history is also full of patterns we ignored until they became undeniable: orbital mechanics, atomic spectra, DNA. The challenge is to know which anomalies are noise and which are signal. With 3i Atlas, I cannot yet decide, but the possibility of signal is too powerful to dismiss. If it is pattern, then we must ask, who or what designed it? It could be natural, the result of galactic tides scattering fragments toward us in waves. Nature itself can write rhythms, and coincidence on cosmic scales can feel like intention. But it could also be deliberate comets sent as couriers, anomalies encoded as code. The possibility of design cannot be excluded. And if design is real, then 3i Atlas was never just comet, it was message in sequence. The danger is that humans see pattern everywhere. We draw connections where none exist. We turn noise into melody. But the gift is that sometimes, in that search, we find truth. Kepler saw pattern in planetary motion, and the laws of orbits were born. Darwin saw pattern in life, and evolution was revealed. To search for pattern in 3i Atlas may risk error, but to not search risks silence. If we confirm pattern, the consequences would be extraordinary. It would mean we are not observing isolated anomalies, but steps in unfolding design. It would mean the galaxy is not random noise, but structured dialogue. And dialogue changes everything. It means the universe is alive with meaning. If we dismiss it as anomaly, we risk closing our eyes. 3i Atlas would fade into history as curiosity, a comet of quirks, nothing more. But what if we are wrong? What if, by dismissing anomaly, we silence the first whispers of conversation? The danger is not in believing too much, it is in refusing to listen at all. Because silence may not be absence, it may be pattern we have not yet learned to hear. The legacy of 3i Atlas will depend on whether we choose anomaly or pattern. If anomaly, it becomes case study, a footnote in astronomy. If pattern, it becomes first chapter, a signal that we are not alone in silence. And I cannot help but believe that the choice is not in the comet, but in us. We decide what meaning to seek, what questions to ask, what patience to keep. Perhaps that is the true test. Not whether 3i Atlas was message, but whether we are willing to treat it as possibility. Because the act of searching itself transforms anomaly into significance. And in that search, we reveal the pattern of who we are: curious, restless, unwilling to leave silence unanswered. Maybe the pattern is not in the comet at all, it is in humanity. So was 3i Atlas anomaly, or pattern? I do not yet know. Perhaps it was only comet, only dust, only ice. But it has already behaved like pattern in us. It has sparked wonder, fear, unity, division, imagination. It has already connected to the rhythm of human curiosity. And that connection is real, regardless of the comet's intent. That is why I suspect it is more than anomaly, because anomalies fade, but patterns echo. And 3i Atlas still echoes. What if 3i Atlas was never meant to stand alone? What if its anomalies were not full message, but introduction, the first step, in a deliberate sequence designed to prepare us for something greater? The possibility is unsettling, but it demands consideration. In nature, preparation exists everywhere. Seeds lie dormant before bloom, storms gather before they break, patterns build slowly, teaching systems to adapt before the full force arrives. If the universe works in rhythms, then perhaps 3i Atlas was rehearsal, an overture, before the true symphony. If deliberate, the logic is clear. You do not speak to a species all at once. You speak in fragments, in steps, in echoes they can understand. Overwhelm destroys gradual rhythm, instruct. And what better medium than comets? They are timeless, universal, seen by every culture, feared and revered alike. If someone or something wished to prepare us, comets would be ideal teachers. Imagine a sequence of visitors, each carrying anomalies just enough to stretch our imagination. The first teaches us to recognize interstellar wanderers. The second unsettles our definitions of natural and artificial. The third hints at return, at code, at dialogue. Step by step, we are drawn closer to the threshold. And beyond the threshold, perhaps, lies undeniable message. If 3i Atlas was first chapter, then what is the book? Is it a galactic archive, scattering fragments across systems to awaken curiosity? Is it a test, watching how species interpret anomaly before deciding whether to reveal more? Or is it warning a sequence designed not to inspire, but to prepare us for danger? The intent is unknowable, but the possibility reshapes how we must approach the sky. Preparation is not always gentle. A whisper can be invitation, or it can be test. What if the sequence measures our patience, our cooperation, our humility? If so, then every reaction matters. Our myths, our fears, our science, they may all be under observation. And the true question is not whether the comet carried code, but whether we carried discipline. Because if we fail at preparation, we may never be granted the next step. History suggests humanity often fails tests of patience. We leap to conclusions, fracture over meaning, weaponize uncertainty. But sometimes, we rise. The Apollo missions turned competition into exploration. The discovery of DNA turned chaos into order. Perhaps 3I Atlas is offering us another chance to rise, to prove that we can approach anomaly not with fear or arrogance, but with curiosity tempered by humility. If the sequence is deliberate, then time may not belong to us. The next step may not come in years or even centuries. Preparation could span generations, teaching patience as much as science. That is unsettling for a species that craves immediacy. But perhaps that is the point. To prepare for the cosmos, we must learn to think not in decades, but in millennia. 3I Atlas may be the first lesson in cosmic patience. And yet, there is darker possibility. What if the sequence does not prepare us for dialogue, but for survival? What if the comets are warnings, telling us of dangers yet unseen dangers approaching with the same inevitability as orbit? Preparation then becomes not invitation, but alarm, and the question becomes, will we notice in time? Whether invitation or warning, preparation demands attention. To dismiss 3I Atlas as coincidence is to risk ignoring the first page of book written for us. And the tragedy of unread books is that their wisdom is lost, even if freely given. As a scientist, I do not claim certainty. I cannot prove sequence, nor intention. But I cannot ignore the rhythm, the timing, the anomalies, the escalation. It feels less like noise and more like narrative. And narrative, even in silence, carries weight. If we are being prepared, then the preparation is already working. We are more curious than before, more cautious, more unified in watching the sky. Even without second comet, the first has shifted us. That shift is part of the lesson. The comet may have been test not of data, but of imagination. And imagination, once awakened, is the foundation of readiness. So what would it mean if 3I Atlas was the beginning of deliberate sequence? It would mean we are not just observers of cosmos, we are participants in curriculum. It would mean that silence is not absence, but method. And it would mean that the universe, in its vastness, has chosen to teach us step by step. That possibility is both humbling and terrifying. I cannot say what comes next. Another comet, another anomaly, another signal woven into natural disguise, or perhaps nothing for centuries, for millennia. But preparation is rarely wasted. Even if silence follows, the lesson remains. To wonder, to listen, to resist, rushing into certainty. That lesson alone may be what we were meant to learn. Perhaps that is the greater preparation, not for contact, not for warning, but for ourselves. To see if we are ready to approach mystery with wisdom. Because wisdom, more than knowledge, is what the universe may require of us. If 3I Atlas was beginning, then the end has not yet arrived. We are still in prologue, still turning the first pages of a story larger than we can yet imagine. And the only choice we have is whether to keep reading. If 3I Atlas was part of deliberate sequence, then the greatest questions are not scientific, but ethical. Science can measure orbits and analyze spectra, but ethics must decide what to do with meaning. And meaning, especially if designed, carries consequences we cannot ignore. The first dilemma is ownership. If a comet carries message, who owns that message? Is it the property of the scientists who decode it, the nations who fund the research, or all of humanity who share the sky? To claim ownership risks fracture, but to share freely risks distortion, misinterpretation, even manipulation. Already, we struggle to agree on the simplest of facts. How could we agree on meaning that comes from the stars? The second dilemma is response. If message exists, do we answer? Silence may seem safe, but silence is also reply. To answer may risk exposure, but to remain silent may waste opportunity. Do we speak for humanity as one, or allow many voices to rise? The ethics of reply are tangled with the ethics of representation, because who speaks does not just send words, they send identity, intention, and risk. The third dilemma is interpretation. If anomalies carry code, how do we decide what it means? Do we trust machines or human intuition? Do we allow philosophers, theologians, and artists to contribute alongside scientists? To narrow interpretation risks blindness. To widen it risks chaos. Every culture will see its own reflection in the message. The danger is not only in what the comet says, but in what we insist it must mean. The fourth dilemma is transparency. Should the public be told everything, or should knowledge be filtered until certainty is reached? Openness builds trust, but it also fuels panic. Silence prevents hysteria, but it also breeds conspiracy. The line between protection and paternalism is razor thin, and whichever path we choose will shape not only the fate of the message, but the fate of trust between science and society. The fifth dilemma is intent. If the sequence was deliberate, what is its purpose? Invitation, warning, test, or manipulation? Each possibility carries ethical weight. If it is invitation, we must ask if we are ready. If it is warning, we must decide whether to act. If it is test, we must consider whether failing carries consequence. If it is manipulation, we must face the possibility that we are pawns in a game we cannot yet understand. Ethics demands caution when intention is unknown. Another dilemma lies in readiness. Even if the sequence is benevolent, are we prepared to face it? To open dialogue prematurely may destabilize us politically, culturally, psychologically. Yet to delay may waste opportunity. Ethics asks, is it right to wait, or is it right to act? Neither answer is without risk, and risk without certainty is the hardest ground for morality to stand upon. There is also the question of power. Who decides what to do with the message? Governments, scientific institutions, international coalitions? Or should decisions be democratic, belonging to every human equally? Centralization risks corruption, decentralization risks chaos. If the cosmos speaks, we must ask, who has the right to listen? For me, the most haunting dilemma is humility. Do we have the right to assume the message is even for us? Perhaps it was never meant for humanity, but for another intelligence entirely. Perhaps we are intercepting conversation, not receiving invitation. If so, is it ethical to intrude? Or does curiosity justify eavesdropping on the universe? The very act of listening may itself be trespass. Even the possibility of deliberate sequence forces us to confront responsibility. Once knowledge is known, it cannot be unknown. Once signal is suspected, it cannot be forgotten. Humanity cannot pretend silence once anomaly has spoken. The ethical burden is not in discovery, but in response. And response will reveal more about us than about the comet. These dilemmas are not hypothetical. Already, debates rage about what to do if we detect undeniable extraterrestrial signal. Do we broadcast? Do we wait? Do we hide? 3. Atlas forces those same questions upon us, even without certainty. It is rehearsal, not only for science, but for ethics. And perhaps that is the deeper test. Not whether we can detect, but whether we can decide wisely. The danger is arrogance, to assume we are ready when perhaps we are not, to claim ownership of knowledge when it belongs to all, to rush into reply when silence might be safer. Arrogance has undone civilizations before. What if the same flaw blinds us to the ethics of the cosmos? But the danger of paralysis is just as real. To hesitate endlessly, to debate until opportunity passes, to silence ourselves out of fear. Inaction can be as dangerous as reckless action. Ethics demands courage as much as caution, because the universe will not wait for us to resolve our debates. It will continue, with or without our readiness. If 3i Atlas was deliberate, then ethics may be the true message. Not what we find in the comet, but what choices we make in response. The universe may not be testing our science, but our judgment. And judgment, once made, will echo through history. Our descendants will not ask only what we discovered, they will ask what we decided. So what are the ethical dilemmas of 3I Atlas? Ownership, response, interpretation, transparency, intent, readiness, power, humility. Each one is unresolved, each one is burden, each one is mirror, and together they form test not of data, but of character. Because the cosmos does not care what we know, it cares how we choose. If the sequence is deliberate, then the greatest discovery is not out there, it is in here. In how we balance fear and wonder, caution and courage, science and humility. That balance will determine not only how we face 3I Atlas, but how we face every mystery the universe sends. Perhaps that is the point. The comet was not message, but mirror. It was never about them, it was always about us. If we accept that 3I Atlas was part of deliberate sequence, then preparation becomes more than science. It becomes transformation. To face the unknown is not only to build tools, but to reshape ourselves. Technology may give us instruments, but philosophy must give us wisdom. And without both, we will not be ready. The first transformation must be technological. If the universe is sending messages, then our tools must be capable of receiving them. That means building telescopes sharper than any before, detectors that can capture faintest anomalies, and probes that can chase comets across the void. We must invest in new frontiers, quantum sensors, AI-driven analysis, and interstellar monitoring networks. Because if the cosmos speaks in whispers, we cannot afford to listen with broken ears. The second transformation must be social. Knowledge of cosmic sequence cannot belong to one nation, one government, or one group. The sky belongs to all of us. If 3I Atlas was signal, then its meaning belongs to humanity as whole. To fracture into secrecy and competition would be to fail the test before it even begins. We must learn to share data, to collaborate without borders, to create global frameworks of trust. Because if the universe speaks, we must answer as one voice. The third transformation must be philosophical. A deliberate sequence challenges not only our science, but our sense of identity. Are we prepared to see ourselves not as rulers of Earth, but as participants in cosmos? That shift requires humility. It requires us to admit that we are not center, not final, not alone. And humility must guide every choice, or arrogance will undo us. Technology without humility is weapon. Humility without technology is silence. We must cultivate both. Transformation will not come easily. Fear will resist it. Power will resist it. Those who benefit from silence will fear the disruption of message. Those who profit from division will fear the unity of shared sky. But transformation is the price of survival. If the sequence is real, then only those who adapt will endure. Already, we can see outlines of transformation. International observatories, pooling data, global networks, monitoring skies, interdisciplinary collaborations, bridging science with philosophy. These are fragile beginnings, but they point the way forward. If we commit, we could create planetary systems of listening, an Earth united by curiosity. The transformation must also reach education. If the sequence is real, we must prepare future generations not only to decode, but to understand. That means teaching science alongside ethics, astronomy alongside philosophy, technology alongside humility. We must raise children who are not only brilliant, but wise, because the next step in the sequence may not come to us, it may come to them. Transformation is not only outward, but inward. As individuals, we must reshape how we hold mystery. We must resist rushing to certainty, whether belief or disbelief. We must learn to live with possibility, to accept the unknown as teacher rather than threat. This is the deepest transformation of all psychological resilience in face of cosmic uncertainty. Without it, fear will rule us. With it, wonder will sustain us. But transformation comes with risk. Technology may divide as easily as unite. A nation that builds instruments first may claim ownership of discovery. A society that fears message may collapse into superstition. Preparation could fracture humanity instead of binding it, which is why transformation must be guided by shared principles: curiosity, humility, cooperation. Without these, tools become weapons, and wonder becomes war. The philosophical transformation may be hardest. For centuries, humanity has lived with illusion of centrality. We saw ourselves as chosen, as final, as unique. The sequence of 3i Atlas challenges that illusion. It forces us to see ourselves as one among many, fragile but not forgotten. Such humility is frightening, but it is also liberating, because to be participant in cosmos is greater than being ruler of Earth. The cultural transformation will echo through art, religion, and myth. Artists will reinterpret the sky, religions will reframe their texts, philosophers will stretch their questions. Every culture will adapt the sequence into its own story, and together, those stories will weave tapestry larger than any single interpretation. In that tapestry, we may find unity, because even in difference, we share the same sky. If humanity commits to transformation, then 3i Atlas has already succeeded in preparing us. Because the comet may never have been message in itself, it may have been catalyst. Catalyst for invention, catalyst for cooperation, catalyst for humility, and in that sense, its legacy is not anomaly, but awakening. Awakening to the idea that the universe may not be silent, and that we must be ready to listen. So, how might humanity transform itself in preparation? By building sharper tools, by sharing knowledge without borders, by teaching wisdom alongside science, by choosing humility over arrogance, by reshaping not only our technology, but our minds and our myths. And in doing so, we prove ourselves ready not only to receive, but to understand. The truth is that transformation is already happening. The comet forced us to ask questions we had not asked before, and once a question is asked, it cannot be unasked. That is transformation in its purest form, the shifting of perspective. And perspective, once shifted, is irreversible. Perhaps that was always the sequence's purpose, not to give us answers, but to change the kinds of questions we ask. And in those new questions lies the beginning of readiness. If 3i Atlas was first step, then transformation is our response. And our response will echo louder than any comet's return, because in preparing for dialogue, we become dialogue ourselves. Humanity, at last, begins to speak not with certainty, but with wonder, and wonder is the first language of the stars. Every transformation carries two possible outcomes: success or failure. If 3i Atlas was preparation, then the question is not only whether we recognize it, but whether we respond wisely. Our future may hinge not on the comet itself, but on what humanity becomes in its shadow. If we succeed, the outcome could be extraordinary. Humanity could rise to the challenge, building sharper tools, stronger unity, deeper humility. We could transform into a species capable of listening to the universe with patience and wisdom. Success would not mean answers, it would mean readiness. Readiness to face whatever comes next, whether invitation, warning, or silence. In the successful path, science thrives. We would build global systems of detection, telescopes spanning continents, missions that chase interstellar visitors without delay. Data would be shared, discoveries would be open, and the pursuit of truth would outpace fear. In this world, every comet becomes classroom, every anomaly becomes teacher. The universe would no longer be distant backdrop, it would be active dialogue. In the successful path, culture flourishes. Religions reinterpret the comet not as threat, but as shared wonder. Artists turn anomalies into new myths, philosophers into new questions. Instead of dividing us, the mystery unites us. A child in one hemisphere looks at the sky and knows another child across the planet sees the same visitor. In shared mystery, we rediscover shared humanity. In the successful path, humility guides us. We resist arrogance, we refuse panic, we embrace the unknown without trying to control it. We learn to live with uncertainty, to see questions as valuable as answers, and in that humility, we grow. Because to be ready for the cosmos is not to be certain, but to be curious without fear. But if we fail, the outcome could be catastrophic. Failure does not require the comet to harm us, it requires only that we harm ourselves. Fear could twist the anomaly into omen, superstition could overtake reason, and division could fracture our response. If we fail, the sequence will not prepare us, it will expose us. And exposure without readiness is collapse. In the failed path, science fractures. Nations hoard data, instruments are turned to secrecy, discoveries are hidden behind politics. Instead of shared pursuit of truth, knowledge becomes weapon. Fear of what might be found outweighs curiosity. The sky becomes battlefield, not classroom. And in that failure, we lose not only the comet's message, but the chance to grow at all. In the failed path, culture collapses into fear. Old myths revive with new terror. Conspiracy overwhelms clarity, and panic drowns out patience. Religions fracture, governments struggle, and media feeds hysteria. The comet becomes not symbol of wonder, but symbol of doom. And in that doom, humanity consumes itself long before any external message could reach us. In the failed path, arrogance blinds us. We leap to conclusions, rushing to send signals we do not understand, answers to questions we cannot yet read. Our impatience exposes us, not as ready partners in dialogue, but as reckless children shouting into the dark. And perhaps the universe does not reward recklessness. Perhaps failure means silence, permanent, unbroken silence. The truth is that both paths are possible. Success and failure are not written in the comet, they are written in us. What we become in response is choice, not destiny. And that choice will determine whether 3i Atlas is remembered as preparation or as warning. As a scientist, I believe success is possible because curiosity is stronger than fear and wonder is stronger than silence. We have failed before, but we have also risen before. We split the atom into bombs, yet also into energy. We built rockets for war, yet also for exploration. Humanity stumbles, but it also adapts, and adaptation is our greatest gift. Still, I cannot ignore the fragility of success. It requires cooperation, honesty, humility, qualities we often neglect. The path to failure is easier, faster, more familiar. Fear spreads quicker than patience, arrogance louder than humility. If we do not fight for success, failure will come by default. The comet has already revealed the fork in the road. One path leads to unity, discovery, transformation. The other leads to fear, division, collapse. The question is not what the universe intends, it is what humanity chooses. Because the outcome is not written in stars, it is written in us. Perhaps that is the real message of 3i Atlas. Not code in its chemistry, not signal in its orbit, but challenge in its presence. It forced us to ask, who are we, when confronted with mystery? Do we rise to wonder, or do we fall to fear? The comet does not answer, that is for us to decide. If we succeed, the legacy of 3i Atlas will be transformation. If we fail, the legacy will be warning. Both outcomes are possible, both futures real, and the difference between them will not be written by the comet, but by the choices we make on Earth. The future does not belong to the stars, it belongs to us, and in that truth lies both burden and hope, because the cosmos may test us, but it cannot decide for us. Only humanity can choose what kind of story we will tell when the next visitor arrives, and that choice is the greatest preparation of all. What does success actually look like? If 3i Atlas was the beginning of preparation, then success is not only about survival, it is about readiness. Readiness not just to detect, but to understand. Not just to respond, but to respond wisely. To imagine that future is to glimpse humanity transformed into something new. In the vision of success, our tools evolve beyond imagination. We build telescopes that see not only light, but every hidden wavelength of truth. We place observatories on the moon, in orbit, on Mars, eyes that never blink, ears that never close. Our probes ride comets, intercept wanderers, sample interstellar dust. Every anomaly is studied, every whisper of sky recorded. And in this world, the cosmos is no longer mystery, it is conversation. In the vision of success, our societies evolve as well. Nations no longer hoard knowledge, because the universe does not speak in borders. Data flows freely across continents, shared instantly, interpreted collectively. International councils of science and philosophy form not as rivals, but as stewards of cosmic dialogue. The question is not who owns the message, but how do we understand it together? In the vision of success, education transforms. Children are not taught to memorize silence, but to question it. They grow up with the sky not as backdrop, but as partner. Science is paired with ethics, technology with humility, discovery with responsibility. Every student learns not just how to build instruments, but how to wield wonder without arrogance. And from them, a generation arises, prepared not to fear the unknown, but to embrace it. In the vision of success, humility becomes culture. We no longer see ourselves as center, but as participant. Earth is no longer stage of dominance, but node in vast dialogue. Religions reframe their texts to include the possibility of cosmic kinship. Art captures not only human struggle, but humanity's place among stars. We begin to live not as isolated species, but as member of galactic story. And in that membership, we find deeper meaning. In the vision of success, patience is virtue. We no longer demand immediate answers, because we understand the cosmos speaks in centuries. We are willing to wait, to listen, to prepare across generations. A child may grow up under the same question their grandparents carried, and still find beauty in not knowing. Uncertainty becomes not burden, but inheritance. That is maturity, to endure silence without despair. In the vision of success, fear loses its power. Comets are no longer omens of doom, but teachers. Anomalies are not threats, but invitations. Humanity no longer collapses into panic at the unknown, but rallies in curiosity. We do not fight the mystery, we welcome it. And in doing so, we show that we are not just intelligent, but wise. This is what success looks like. Humanity as listener. Not conqueror of cosmos, not master of silence, but listener. We listen with instruments, with patience, with humility, with imagination. We do not assume we are owed answers, we prepare ourselves to deserve them. And in that posture of listening, we may finally be ready for dialogue. But success is not only outward, it is inward. A successful humanity is one that has learned to master its own flaws. Division gives way to unity. Arrogance gives way to humility. Fear gives way to wonder. These transformations are not easy, but they are possible. And if we achieve them, then 3i Atlas will have done its work. Not by bringing message, but by awakening change. Imagine the day the next visitor arrives. Humanity is ready, not fractured, but united. We study the comet with instruments built by global hands. We interpret it with minds trained in patience and humility. We do not leap to omen, nor to panic, nor to arrogance. We wait, we wonder, we listen. And in that listening, we prove ourselves worthy of dialogue. That is the true measure of success, not whether the comet carries message, but whether we are prepared to hear it. The cosmos may not reveal its secrets quickly, but readiness itself is triumph. Because to be ready is to prove that humanity has risen beyond fear, beyond arrogance, beyond division. To be ready is to show we are no longer children of earth, but listeners of stars. The beauty of success is that it does not require certainty. We do not need proof of message to prepare for dialogue. The act of preparation itself is success. It unites us, advances us, transforms us. Even if no message ever comes, the readiness we build will make us stronger, and in that strength lies the gift of the comet. Perhaps that is the paradox of 3i Atlas. Its legacy is not in proving message, but in forcing us to prepare as if message exists. And that preparation becomes transformation. Transformation becomes success. Success becomes our true dialogue, not with the comet, but with ourselves. So what does success look like? It looks like a species no longer blind to possibility, no longer ruled by fear, no longer fractured by arrogance. It looks like humanity listening together, waiting together, preparing together. And in that listening, humanity becomes something greater than it has ever been. Not conqueror, not spectator, but participant. That is success. Not certainty, not answers, not control, but readiness. And readiness is enough. If success is readiness, then failure is collapse. Collapse not of instruments or data, but of ourselves. For the comet carries no threat by itself, the danger lies in our response. And if we fail, the legacy of 3i Atlas will not be transformation, but ruin. In the vision of failure, fear dominates. The comet becomes omen, anomaly becomes curse, and silence becomes terror. Humanity does not unite in curiosity, it fractures in panic. Old myths revive as prophecies, new conspiracies spread like wildfire. Instead of awakening wonder, Three-Eye Atlas awakens dread, and dread consumes faster than truth. In the vision of failure, science collapses under pressure. Nations hide data, claiming ownership of the unknown. Telescopes become tools of secrecy, not discovery. Information is manipulated to maintain control, and scientists are silenced for speaking too openly. Knowledge becomes weapon, not wisdom. And in that weaponization, the comet's true value is lost forever. In the vision of failure, culture fractures. Religions clash over meaning, governments argue over response, societies polarize over interpretation. Every culture sees only its own reflection in the comet, refusing to see the possibility of unity. Instead of shared mystery, we inherit endless division. The comet becomes battlefield of belief, not bridge of wonder. In the vision of failure, arrogance blinds us. We rush to declare meaning before patience allows clarity. Some proclaim message where none exists, others deny possibility before evidence is tested. Impatience breeds reckless action. Signals are sent too soon. Warnings are ignored. Opportunities wasted. We act not with wisdom, but with pride. And pride is the quickest path to collapse. In the vision of failure, technology becomes weapon. Instead of building instruments to listen, we build systems to defend. The comet is seen not as visitor, but as threat. Space becomes militarized, not for exploration, but for fear. Satellites watch the sky not for dialogue, but for war. And in that shift, humanity destroys the very possibility of cosmic trust. Failure feeds on impatience. Humanity has always craved answers now, but the cosmos speaks in centuries, not seconds. If we cannot learn patience, then we will tear ourselves apart long before the sky reveals anything at all. The greatest danger is not silence, it is our inability to endure it. In the vision of failure, conspiracy overpowers truth. Every anomaly becomes proof of hidden agendas, every silence proof of cover-ups. Public trust in science dissolves, replaced by speculation and hysteria. And when trust dies, knowledge dies with it. For science without trust is noise, and noise cannot prepare us for dialogue. The darkest failure is not ignorance, it is indifference. A world too distracted, too divided, too consumed by its own crises to care about the sky. In that world, Three-Eye Atlas fades into history as forgotten anomaly. The preparation is wasted, the opportunity lost. The comet may have carried rhythm, but humanity never learned to listen. Failure would mean that when the next visitor comes, we are unready. Instruments pointed elsewhere, societies fractured, imaginations dulled. We would miss the chance not because the universe was silent, but because we were deaf. And deafness, born of fear, is permanent. The cosmos does not repeat invitations forever. The vision of failure is terrifying because it is plausible. We already see division, fear, conspiracy, arrogance. We already struggle to share knowledge across borders. The comet revealed not only possibility, but fragility. And fragility, if ignored, becomes fracture. As a scientist, this vision haunts me, because I know how easily curiosity can be drowned by fear. I know how quickly truth can be silenced by power. I know how fragile trust is, and how vital it is for science to hold. The comet tests us not only in knowledge, but in discipline, and failure of discipline is the surest failure of all. So what does true failure look like? It looks like a species that could not rise to wonder, a species that saw anomaly and chose fear, that saw possibility and chose arrogance, that saw unity and chose division. Failure is not silence from the cosmos, it is silence within ourselves, the silence of curiosity extinguished. If that happens, Three-Eye Atlas will not be remembered as teacher, but as warning ignored, and the tragedy will not be in the comet, but in us, because failure would mean we were given a chance to grow, and we refused it. The future does not require this failure. It is not destiny, but choice. Every day, humanity decides whether to rise or fall, to listen or ignore, to unite or fracture. Failure remains possible, but so does success. And perhaps that is the point of the comet, to force us to choose. If we fail, it will not be because the universe demanded it. It will be because we demanded nothing better of ourselves. And that is the most devastating failure of all. Not every story ends in triumph or collapse. More often, humanity walks the narrow space between. Neither full success nor full failure, but a fragile balance of progress and struggle. If 3i Atlas was preparation, then perhaps the most realistic future is this middle path. On the middle path, science advances but unevenly. Some nations share data, while others hoard it. International collaborations grow, but mistrust lingers. Instruments improve, telescopes sharpen, but not all discoveries are made open. Knowledge flows, but never fully freely. And in this tension, humanity advances, yet stumbles. We move forward, but always with hesitation. On the middle path, society responds with both wonder and fear. For some, the comet is inspiration, an invitation to curiosity. For others, it is omen, a symbol of doom. Children learn to dream of stars, while adults argue over meaning. Culture does not unify around the comet, it fractures into competing interpretations. And yet, even in fracture, curiosity persists. We are divided, but not silent. On the middle path, humility struggles against arrogance. Some scientists speak with patience, admitting uncertainty. Others rush to claim conclusions, eager for recognition. Philosophers urge caution, while politicians demand answers. The comet becomes tool for agendas, even as it remains mystery. We do not collapse into arrogance completely, but we never fully embrace humility either. We live suspended between wisdom and pride. On the middle path, fear never fully fades. The comet inspires conspiracy theories, but not enough to destroy trust in science. Panic spreads in pockets, but wonder spreads in others. The world does not unite, but it does not fall apart either. Instead, humanity learns to live with tension, caught between awe and suspicion. And in that tension, we stumble forward. On the middle path, technology grows but not always for listening. Telescopes expand, but so do weapons in orbit. Missions are launched, but not always shared. The same tools that could decode anomaly are also built for defense. We prepare, but never with pure intent. Progress becomes double-edged, sharpening curiosity and fear at the same time. We gain power, but not wisdom. This middle path is messy, imperfect, human. We do not rise fully to the challenge, but we do not collapse under it either. We linger in uncertainty, progressing slowly, unevenly, cautiously. The sequence of the comet does not unite us, but it does not destroy us. Instead, it reshapes us in fragments. Some cultures grow wiser, some grow fearful, some grow indifferent, and the whole remains patchwork of success and failure woven together. The danger of this path is stagnation. By moving only halfway, we risk missing opportunities that demand unity. A message may arrive, but our fractured response may render it meaningless. Some may interpret it as code, others as noise, and without shared discipline, we may never agree. The universe could be speaking, and humanity may remain locked in argument. In that argument, preparation is wasted. The hope of this path is resilience. Even in division, we adapt. Even in fear, we continue to search. Curiosity survives, even if weakened. Humanity does not collapse, it endures. And endurance, though imperfect, is survival. Perhaps the cosmos does not require perfection, only persistence. On this path, the legacy of 3i Atlas is complicated. It is remembered by some as symbol of inspiration, by others as symbol of confusion. It becomes both teacher and battleground, myth and science, unity and division. And yet, its memory lingers, because even in uncertainty, we cannot ignore what it made us ask. The comet remains in history, not as triumph or tragedy, but as mirror of our contradictions. As a scientist, I know this middle path well. Science itself is never pure success, nor pure failure. It is progress mixed with error, clarity clouded by confusion. We rarely leap forward cleanly. We stumble forward awkwardly. And perhaps humanity's path with the comet will be the same. Not victory, not ruin, but slow, uneven transformation. So what does this middle path look like? A humanity that listens, but not always wisely. A world that prepares, but not always together. A culture that wonders, but also fears. Progress mixed with failure, readiness mixed with arrogance, humility mixed with pride. It is messy, fragile, imperfect, but it is real. The question is whether the middle path is enough. Enough to prepare us for next step in sequence, enough to prove that we deserve to hear more, or will the cosmos require more than half measures? If the sequence is test, then partial success may still count as failure. And failure, in this case, may mean silence eternal. Perhaps that is the greatest danger of the middle path. Not collapse, but mediocrity. To neither fall nor rise, but drift. To survive, but never transform. To hear the whisper, but never learn the language. That outcome is tragic in its own way, because it wastes the gift of anomaly without ever fully destroying it. We are left with fragments of readiness, but no whole. Yet the middle path may also be the most human path. We rarely leap to greatness, we stumble toward it. We rarely collapse entirely, we adapt enough to endure. And perhaps the universe knows this. Perhaps the sequence was designed not for perfection, but for persistence. Not to test if we succeed at once, but if we keep trying despite failure. And trying, even imperfectly, is still dialogue. So, the middle path is not clean, not heroic, not tragic. It is messy survival. A species that half listens, half fears, half wonders, but never stops. And in never stopping, humanity shows its truest strength, persistence. We may not be ready yet, but we refuse to give up. That refusal may be enough. Because in the long silence of cosmos, the species that keeps listening is the one that eventually hears. And even if we stumble, as long as we keep listening, we remain in dialogue. What if the sequence was never real? What if 3i Atlas carried no code, no intention, no message, only dust and ice? And the rest was illusion we created. This possibility unsettles me more than any other, because it forces us to confront not the comet, but ourselves. Humans are masters of projection. We see faces in clouds, omens in eclipses, meaning in silence. Our minds are wired to find pattern, even when none exists. That gift has led to discovery, but also to delusion. What if 3i Atlas is only the latest canvas for our imagination, nothing more? The anomalies may be nothing but natural quirks. Chemistry skewed by measurement, brightness exaggerated by distance, orbit distorted by observation. Science is imperfect, and imperfection breeds illusions. What looks like signal today may prove to be noise tomorrow. And if so, the entire sequence is house built on shadows. The danger of illusion is not that it fools us, but that it reveals us. For even if the comet carried no message, we acted as if it did. We asked questions, we debated meaning, we feared, we wondered. The meaning was never in the comet, it was in us. And perhaps that is the truest message of all. If the sequence is illusion, then humanity has been speaking to itself. We created story out of silence, dialogue out of anomaly. The comet became mirror, reflecting our hopes and fears back at us. And in that reflection, we learn more about ourselves than about the sky. Perhaps that was enough. But illusion can still shape reality. Even if 3i Atlas was nothing but rock and ice, it changed us. It made us build new instruments, ask new questions, imagine new futures. An illusion that drives transformation is no longer empty, it becomes catalyst. And in that sense, the comet's silence was as powerful as message. If the sequence is illusion, then the cosmos may not be speaking. That realization can feel crushing, because it restores silence where we hoped for dialogue. But silence is not absence. Silence is invitation to wonder, to imagine, to create meaning ourselves. Even if the universe does not send message, humanity can choose to become message. Perhaps that is the secret of illusion, that in searching for meaning outside ourselves, we awaken the meaning within. The comet does not need to be messenger, we make it so by the stories we tell. And those stories guide our science, our culture, our unity. The meaning we create is as real as any message we might have received. As a scientist, I resist illusion, but I cannot dismiss its power. Science thrives on separating signal from noise. Yet sometimes the noise shapes us more than the signal ever could. Even mistakes teach. Even illusions awaken. If 3i Atlas was illusion, then it has still been one of the most valuable illusions of our age. The danger is arrogance, believing too strongly in what is not there. To mistake noise for code, chance for design, silence for signal. That path can waste resources, distort priorities, fracture trust. If illusion blinds us, then it becomes danger. But if illusion inspires us, then it becomes gift. The challenge is knowing the difference. If the sequence was illusion, then our legacy is not what we discovered, but how we responded. Did we turn illusion into progress? Did we build sharper tools, stronger cooperation, deeper humility because of story we told ourselves? Or did we let illusion become delusion, wasting energy on fantasy while ignoring truth? The comet cannot answer that. Only we can. The possibility of illusion does not weaken the story, it strengthens it. Because it shows that humanity does not need the universe to send meaning. We create meaning ourselves. We are not passive listeners, we are active storytellers. And in those stories, we shape our destiny. So what if 3i Atlas was never message? Then the meaning was never in the comet, it was always in us. The questions we asked, the fears we faced, the dreams we imagined, those are real, even if the signal was not. And in that sense, the comet succeeded, not as messenger, but as mirror. It reflected our hunger for connection, and that hunger is truth. Perhaps that is the paradox of illusion. It can reveal more truth than reality itself. Because in chasing the possibility of dialogue, we discovered who we are when we hope the universe is listening. And that discovery matters, even if the universe is silent. Because silence does not erase the meaning we created, it amplifies it. If the sequence is illusion, then humanity's task is not to despair, it is to create, to write the messages we wish to hear, to build the futures we wish to see, to embody the dialogue we imagine. The universe may not have sent us signal, but it gave us sky, and in that sky we can inscribe our own story. So illusion or not, the legacy of 3i Atlas remains. It awakened curiosity, inspired technology, united wonder and fear. It proved that even silence can change us, and in that change lies its truth. Because meaning does not have to come from the stars, it can come from us. Whether 3i Atlas was message or illusion, its greatest impact may be neither. The comet may never return, its anomalies may never resolve, its silence may never break. But what it has already created in us is undeniable, a shift in consciousness. For the first time, we began to think not only as earthbound beings, but as cosmic beings, and that shift is the legacy that endures. Cosmic awareness begins with perspective. To look at a comet and see not just ice and dust, but possibility. To understand that even a fleeting visitor can expand the boundaries of human imagination. This awareness is not about answers, it is about scale. It reminds us that we are part of a universe too vast to control, yet intimate enough to invite wonder. Cosmic awareness is humility. To accept that we are not center, not chosen, not final. We are small, fragile, one among many. Yet in that humility is dignity, for to recognize our smallness is to recognize our place in something greater. 3. Atlas humbled us, and in that humility, it awakened deeper vision, the vision of a species that knows it is not alone in silence. Cosmic awareness is also responsibility. Once we see ourselves as part of universe, our choices take on new weight. How we care for Earth, how we share knowledge, how we face mystery, all are no longer local matters, but cosmic ones. We are not only caretakers of planet, but representatives of it. If the cosmos ever listens, it will hear not just our signals, but our actions. And in those actions lies the measure of our awareness. Cosmic awareness is patience. To live with silence without despair, to wait for answers across centuries. The universe does not hurry, and neither must we. A comet may take millennia to return, but awareness endures beyond generations. We pass on not certainty, but wonder. And in that inheritance, humanity becomes timeless. Because a species that can wait is a species that can endure. Cosmic awareness is unity, not the erasure of difference, but the recognition of shared sky. Every culture, every language, every story looks up at the same stars. 3. Atlas did not divide the heavens, it united them. In its passage, The comet reminded us that we are one species under one sky, and awareness of that unity may be the beginning of peace. Cosmic awareness is imagination. Even if the comet carried no message, we imagined one. We wove stories, built theories, asked questions that stretched the limits of science and myth. That act of imagination is itself transformation, because a species that imagines beyond itself is already moving towards something greater, and imagination, once awakened, cannot be silenced. As a scientist, I feel this awareness like weight and gift. I cannot prove message, nor can I dismiss illusion, but I can feel the change it created in us. We think differently now, we wonder differently now. The sky is no longer distant, it is dialogue, even if the dialogue is with ourselves. And that shift in thought is more powerful than any single discovery. Cosmic awareness also reshapes our priorities. We begin to value not only knowledge, but wisdom. Not only answers, but the courage to ask. We see our planet not as endless, but as fragile home worth protecting. We see ourselves not as rulers of silence, but as participants in story greater than our own. And with that awareness comes responsibility to live with dignity in the universe. Even if 3i Atlas was illusion, cosmic awareness is real, because once perspective shifts, it does not return to its old state. A child who grows up under the question, what if, will never forget it. A culture that imagines dialogue with stars will never unimagine it, and a species that awakens to its place in cosmos will never again be fully earthbound. The beauty of cosmic awareness is that it does not depend on outcome. Whether the comet was message, or silence, or coincidence, the awareness it awakened endures. We do not need the universe to speak for us to realize we are part of it. We need only to notice, to imagine, to care. That act alone is awakening, and awakening is enough. Perhaps that is the final legacy of 3i Atlas. Not that it returned, not that it carried code, not that it was first of sequence, but that it shifted us into a new state of mind. A state where we are not just species of Earth, but species of cosmos, where we think not only of survival, but of meaning, where we see not only what is, but what could be. Cosmic awareness is fragile, but it is also permanent. Once sparked, it can dim, but never disappear. It is ember carried forward, waiting to ignite new generations. That ember now burns in us because of a comet, and whether or not it returns, the fire has already begun. So what is the true legacy of 3i Atlas? Not proof, not certainty, not even message. The legacy is awareness. Awareness that we are part of something larger. Awareness that silence is not empty. Awareness that meaning does not need to be given, it can be created. That awareness transforms us, even if nothing else ever does. We are now a species that listens, not perfectly, not without error, not without fear, but listening is the beginning of belonging. And in listening, humanity has already taken its first step into cosmos, not with rockets, not with signals, but with consciousness. And consciousness is dialogue. If 3i Atlas gave us awareness, then the question becomes, what do we do with it? Awareness by itself is not enough. It must grow into action, into culture, into destiny. And that destiny may be written not on Earth, but in the stars. Cosmic awareness is a seed. It does not transform us instantly, but it plants the possibility of transformation. Once humanity accepts that we are participants in a vast universe, our ambitions expand. We begin to look beyond survival on Earth, to survival across worlds. And in this shift lies the blueprint of our far future. The first step is permanence in space. Until now, our presence beyond Earth has been fleeting satellites, space stations, temporary missions. Cosmic awareness demands more. Colonies, habitats, settlements that endure. We will place roots on the Moon, on Mars, and eventually beyond. Because to be a species of cosmos, we must learn to live among the stars, not just look at them. This expansion is not only technological, it is psychological. To live on another world is to think differently about home. No longer can we see Earth as singular cradle of life, but as one of many possible homes. That realization will change how we define identity, culture, and belonging. A child born on Mars may never see Earth, yet still feel connected to humanity. That is cosmic awareness made flesh. The second step is stewardship. Once we see ourselves as participants in the cosmos, we cannot treat planets, moons, or comets as mere resources. They are not just mines to be stripped, but members of a greater system. To exploit recklessly is to fail the awareness we gained. Stewardship means exploring responsibly, balancing survival with respect. It means treating the universe not as conquest, but as dialogue. The third step is dialogue itself. Even if the cosmos is silent, awareness pushes us to prepare for voices we have not yet heard. Our instruments will expand, searching not only for comets, but for signals. We will build telescopes on lunar craters, send probes into interstellar space, weave networks of listening posts across the solar system. And even if the silence continues, the act of listening becomes a declaration of who we are, a species that does not ignore the possibility of others. But the most radical step is transformation of ourselves. Cosmic awareness does not only expand outward, it reshapes inward. Our politics, our philosophies, even our religions begin to evolve under its influence. We start to ask not just what it means to be human, but what it means to be cosmic. That shift may be the most profound legacy of 3I Atlas. Imagine a future where wars are not fought over borders, but over how best to prepare for the stars. Where nations compete not in destruction, but in discovery. Where education trains children not only in history of Earth, but in history of cosmos. A culture that defines progress not by wealth, but by wisdom in navigating silence. That future is not guaranteed, but it is possible, and awareness is the key that unlocks it. Technology will become both our tool and our test. We will invent drives capable of carrying us to the outer planets and eventually to nearby stars. But each advance will carry temptation to dominate, to exploit, to weaponize. If cosmic awareness does not anchor us in humility, then our technology may outpace our wisdom. And a species armed with power but not perspective is one that risks self-destruction long before it reaches the stars. This is why 3I Atlas matters. It forced us to see fragility of our assumptions, the thinness of our certainties. It reminded us that even a comet, a fragment of dust and ice, can humble a civilization. That humility is what must carry us forward. Without it, cosmic awareness collapses into cosmic arrogance. The destiny of humanity is not only to survive, but to listen. Listening means more than waiting for signals from other worlds. It means listening to ourselves, to our mistakes, to our responsibilities. It means recognizing that the silence of the universe may be waiting for us to prove we are ready. And readiness is not measured by rockets, but by wisdom. So what will the far future look like? Perhaps it will be a network of civilizations spread across planets and moons. Perhaps it will be a culture defined by stewardship of worlds, by curiosity that never dims. Perhaps it will be a species that no longer asks if we are alone, but asks instead, what does it mean to belong? There will be failures, missteps, and dangers along the way. But if cosmic awareness has truly taken root, we will persist, because awareness, once sparked, cannot be extinguished. It is ember that survives even in darkness, and from ember comes flame, and from flame comes future. The far future of humanity is not predetermined, it is choice. A choice we make every day whether to look inward or outward, to fear or to wonder, to destroy or to listen. 3. Atlas gave us that choice more clearly than ever before, and our destiny depends on how we answer it. So I ask again, what if the comet was never messenger, never anomaly, never intention? What if it was simply mirror forcing us to see the kind of species we could become if we chose the stars? That, I believe, is the true future written in the heavens. What if the universe is not silent at all? What if what we call silence is simply delay, a pause, a waiting? Not because no one is out there, but because we are not yet ready to hear. This possibility unsettles me more than emptiness. True emptiness would be final, but waiting suggests intention. Waiting suggests expectation. Waiting suggests that the silence itself may be part of a test. 3. Atlas may have been fragment, anomaly, or illusion. But what it awakened in us is the idea that the cosmos might not respond on our timeline. Perhaps the universe is speaking in intervals too vast for our patience. What looks like silence could simply be signals stretched across centuries. And if so, the question is not whether the universe speaks, it is whether we will survive long enough to listen. As a scientist, I know how fragile patience is. We live in a world that demands immediacy answers now. Discoveries fast, breakthroughs before funding runs out. But the cosmos has no deadlines. Stars burn for billions of years. Orbits unfold in silence measured in millennia. What if messages travel on the same scale? What if our task is not to hear instantly, but to wait faithfully? The silence we encounter may be deliberate. Not cruel, not indifferent, deliberate. Perhaps advanced civilizations do not flood the cosmos with noise, but with restraint. They wait until species like ours learn humility, discipline, endurance. Because a species that cannot wait cannot be trusted with dialogue. If this is true, then our greatest challenge is not technology, it is maturity. We already have instruments sensitive enough to detect faint signals. We already launch probes that reach interstellar space. But do we have the patience to wait for a reply that may not come for centuries? Do we have the discipline to maintain listening posts for generations without answer? Do we have the humility to prepare without proof? Perhaps that is what the universe waits for, not intelligence, but wisdom. Intelligence is common, wisdom is rare. Any species can build machines. Not every species can resist arrogance. Any species can send noise into space. But few may choose silence until dialogue is earned. If that is the test, then the silence we hear is not absence, it is evaluation. 3. Atlas becomes symbol in this frame. It appeared, raised questions, and disappeared again. Its silence forced us to confront our own impatience. We wanted clarity. Instead, we were given ambiguity. And ambiguity is the crucible of maturity. A species that demands certainty will collapse into delusion. But a species that can live with uncertainty may be ready to hear the cosmos. So what if the silence is waiting? Then every action we take matters. How we treat each other, how we use our technology, how we steward our planet, all are part of our readiness. The universe may not judge us by what we know, but by how we behave, because behavior reveals character, and character determines whether dialogue is safe. This changes the meaning of cosmic awareness. Awareness is not only recognition of vastness, it is recognition of responsibility. If the silence is waiting, then we are already in dialogue. Every choice we make is part of the answer we are sending back, and the universe listens not to our words, but to our maturity. Imagine this perspective, the universe as teacher. The silence is lesson, not punishment. Every comet, every anomaly, every unanswered signal is part of curriculum. The lesson is patience, humility, endurance. Those who learn may one day hear the reply. Those who fail vanish into their own noise. This interpretation frightens me and inspires me in equal measure. Frightens, because it means failure is not only personal, it is cosmic. In failing to mature, we silence ourselves forever. Inspires, because it means every effort to endure, every act of humility, every moment of listening is not wasted. It is preparation, it is answer. Perhaps this is the meaning of 3i Atlas after all. Not message, not code, but mirror. It revealed our hunger for certainty, our fear of silence, our impatience for meaning. And in that revelation, it showed us what must change. The comet may not have spoken, but it made us notice that we are not yet ready to listen. If the silence is waiting, then our path is clear. We must endure uncertainty. We must prepare without proof. We must act as though dialogue is inevitable, even if no voice ever comes, because in that posture, we prove ourselves ready. Readiness itself becomes message. And maybe, just maybe, that is what the cosmos is waiting for. A species that answers silence with patience, arrogance with humility, noise with discipline. If we can be that species, then perhaps the silence will one day break. What if the silence is not waiting? What if it is final, absolute, and unbroken, not test, not pause, not lesson, but truth? What if we are, and always will be, alone? This possibility is more difficult for many to accept than any alien encounter. Because if the universe is truly silent, then the responsibility of meaning falls entirely on us. There will be no dialogue, no guidance, no confirmation. Humanity would be the only voice, echoing in a cosmos that never answers. For scientists, this vision is sobering. The vastness of the universe seems to demand other life. Billions of stars, billions of planets. How could we be unique? Yet despite decades of listening, despite thousands of exoplanets discovered, the silence remains. Perhaps this is not delay. Perhaps it is the nature of reality. If eternal silence is true, then humanity carries a burden like no other. We are not simply one species among many. We are the only known species capable of reflection, imagination, and awareness. In such a universe, our failures matter infinitely more. If we destroy ourselves, we extinguish the only known light of consciousness. The silence will not replace us. The silence will simply continue. This interpretation changes everything. It means that every poem, every equation, every act of kindness or cruelty is not just local, it is cosmic. We are not just writing our own history, we are writing the only history, and that makes every choice unbearably heavy, because if we fall, the universe loses its only known witness. But silence eternal does not mean meaning absent. It means meaning must be created, not discovered. We cannot wait for messages from stars. We must become the message ourselves. The burden is great, but so is the freedom, because in the absence of dialogue, we shape the universe with our own voice. Eternal silence also reframes the comet. 3I Atlas may never have been messenger. It may have been nothing more than ice and dust, following laws of physics without purpose. But in our response, we gave it meaning. We turned anomaly into story, silence into speculation. That act alone proves that even in absence, we create dialogue. The dialogue is with ourselves. To be alone in the cosmos is terrifying, but it is also profound. It means that consciousness is rarer than we dared to believe. It means that our awareness is not accident, but miracle. And miracles, once recognized, must be cherished. The silence demands that we treat our awareness not as trivial, but as sacred. Imagine the weight of this realization spreading through humanity. Religions would shift, philosophies would deepen, sciences would take on urgency. Every discipline would carry the reminder: we are not just a species, we are the species. The silence is not cruel, it is indifferent. And against that indifference, our duty is to ensure that awareness does not die. The danger of eternal silence is despair. If we are alone, some will say, life is meaningless. But despair is mistake, because meaning does not have to come from outside, it can come from within. If the universe gives us no story, then we must write the story ourselves. Silence does not erase purpose, it forces us to create it. Perhaps this is the truest legacy of 3I Atlas. Not that it hinted at message, but that it reminded us that even if message never comes, we can still live as if our lives matter. Because they do. They matter precisely because nothing else may exist to carry meaning forward. Eternal silence also clarifies our responsibilities. We must preserve Earth not only for ourselves, but because it may be the only cradle of life in an endless void. We must protect our cultures, our knowledge, our art, because they may be the only beauty the universe ever knows. We must continue to explore, not because others wait for us, but because exploration itself is a sacred act in silence. It is our way of answering a question that may never have been asked. To be alone is not to be meaningless. To be alone is to be essential. If silence is eternal, then we are the sole keepers of awareness, and that responsibility is greater than any message from the stars could ever have been. So what does eternal silence mean? It means that humanity is not waiting for invitation. We are writing the invitation ourselves. It means that when we send probes into interstellar space, we are not hoping for reply, we are declaring our existence. We are saying, here, in this corner of silence, awareness bloomed. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps the silence is not tragedy, but stage. A stage vast enough to hold the story of one fragile species, daring to create meaning in a universe that offers none. In that story, we are not victims of silence, we are its answer. If the silence is permanent, then 3I Atlas is not messenger, it is reminder. Reminder that meaning is not given, it is made. Reminder that survival is not trivial, it is cosmic duty. Reminder that even in absence, dialogue exists, because we are capable of speaking. And to speak, even into silence, is to matter. So I end with this thought. If the silence never breaks, then humanity is the only voice. Let us make that voice wise. Let us make it beautiful. Let us make it worthy of the stage it occupies, the stage of eternity. What if the purpose of Three-Eye Atlas was never in its fragments, its orbit, or its anomalies? What if the true meaning lies not in the comet itself, but in what it made us do to search, to wonder, to ask questions without answers? As a scientist, I am trained to seek clarity, but I have learned that clarity is rare. Most of science is not about final answers, but about the pursuit of them. The search is where discovery happens, where curiosity thrives, where wonder lives. And perhaps the cosmos knows this. Perhaps the meaning is not in what we find, but in the act of seeking itself. Three-Eye Atlas reminded us of this truth. It appeared suddenly, raised mysteries, and vanished again, leaving us with more questions than answers. But those questions reshaped us. They pushed us to refine our instruments, to question our assumptions, to expand our imagination. The comet gave us little data, but endless direction, and in that direction lies its value. The search is what binds us together. Across nations, across cultures, across generations, humans look up and ask, what is out there? This question unites us more than any answer ever could. We may disagree on interpretations, but the act of seeking connects us. It is our shared inheritance as a species, our refusal to stop wondering. Meaning in the search is not new. Ancient stargazers in Mesopotamia tracked the heavens, not because they expected answers, but because the act itself was sacred. Monks in medieval Europe copied star charts by candlelight, knowing they might never understand them fully. Modern astronomers spend lifetimes studying data that may outlast them. None of them worked for certainty, they worked for continuity. The search itself was the meaning. If the universe is silent, then the search becomes our dialogue. Every observation, every question, every hypothesis is part of the conversation we hold with existence. The silence does not answer, but it shapes the way we speak, and in that speaking, we discover not the universe, but ourselves. The danger is to believe that only answers matter. If we measure our progress solely by what we prove, then the silence feels like failure. But if we measure progress by the depth of our questions, then the silence becomes gift, because silence forces us to ask better, to refine, to expand. In this way, silence is not absence, it is fuel. The search also transforms our culture. When we teach children to wonder about the stars, we are not teaching astronomy. We are teaching humility. When artists paint galaxies, when poets write about comets, they are not describing facts, they are describing awe. And awe is meaning. The search turns raw data into story, and story into connection. 3-Eye Atlas was small in physical scale but enormous in symbolic power. It did not give us answers, but it ignited new questions, questions that may take centuries to explore. In that sense, the comet's greatest legacy may not be scientific at all. It may be cultural, psychological, philosophical. It changed not what we know, but how we search. Imagine if the act of searching is the true purpose of consciousness. Not to conquer, not to dominate, not to reach certainty, but to wonder endlessly. In this model, awareness is not judged by what it finds, but by whether it keeps seeking. Humanity becomes meaningful, not when it answers the universe, but when it refuses to stop asking. And that refusal is our immortality. As a scientist, I find peace in this perspective, because it removes the despair of silence. Even if we never hear a voice from the stars, our search is still meaningful. The act of listening, the act of questioning, the act of preparing that is enough. Meaning is not at the destination, it is in the journey. This is why I believe the search itself is sacred. Every experiment, every observation, every theory is part of a larger story. The story of a species that refused to stop wondering. And even if the universe never responds, that story is still beautiful. Because it proves that life, at least here, did not settle for survival alone. It reached for meaning, even in silence. So what does the search give us? It gives us resilience, because questions never end. It gives us unity, because wonder is shared. It gives us humility, because the unknown is vast. And it gives us hope, because every question suggests that more awaits. 3-Eye Atlas may have been fragment, anomaly, or illusion. But in making us search, It became more than comet. It became catalyst. Catalyst for questions that shape generations. Catalyst for awareness that outlasts certainty. Catalyst for meaning itself. In the end, perhaps the universe does not care whether we find answers. Perhaps the only thing that matters is whether we keep looking, because the act of searching transforms us, and that transformation is meaning enough. What if the greatest mystery is not out there among the stars, but in here within us? What if the search for meaning is not only cosmic, but psychological, biological, even spiritual? Perhaps the frontier we most overlook is the human mind itself. For centuries, science has looked outward. Telescopes grew sharper, spacecraft ventured farther, detectors grew more sensitive. We have mapped the sky in wavelengths invisible to the eye, reaching billions of light years into the past. Yet for all this, the universe outside may not be as mysterious as the one inside our skulls. Consciousness remains elusive, awareness remains unexplained, and meaning itself remains unresolved. We look outward for answers, but perhaps the cosmos waits for us to look inward. 3. Atlas forced us to confront our own minds. It gave us fragments, anomalies, and silence. The facts were ambiguous, yet the stories we spun around them revealed something deeper. Our hunger for connection, our fear of isolation, our tendency to create patterns. These reactions came not from the comet, but from us, and in studying them, we glimpse the truth that the greatest unknown is human thought itself. Why do we seek meaning in silence? Why do we imagine signals in noise, or messages in dust and ice? Because consciousness is restless. It cannot accept absence. It fills the void with story. This ability to project meaning is both strength and vulnerability. It drives science, but it also fuels delusion. And until we understand it, our search outward will always reflect the unanswered search inward. As a scientist, I often ask, why do we need the universe to speak? Why is silence so unbearable? Perhaps because the silence mirrors our own uncertainty about what we are. We are intelligent enough to question, but not yet wise enough to answer ourselves. Our search for aliens may be disguised search for understanding of humanity. The human mind is the most complex structure we know. Billions of neurons, trillions of connections, patterns firing in rhythms more intricate than any cometary orbit. And yet, for all our advances in neuroscience, we still do not know why consciousness exists at all. We can map activity, but not meaning. We can observe thought, but not explain awareness. This gap is not small, it is infinite, and in that infinity lies the greatest mystery of all. Perhaps the frontier of mind is prerequisite to the frontier of stars. A species that cannot understand itself cannot hope to understand the cosmos. If we do not grasp the origins of thought, how can we claim to grasp the possibility of dialogue with others? If we do not know why we search, how can we judge what we find? The search inward may be the key to making sense of the search outward. Consider this. What if cosmic awareness is only reflection of self-awareness? We see patterns in comets because we see patterns in ourselves. We imagine voices in silence because we cannot bear our own loneliness. We create stories in the stars because we are creatures of story. The cosmos may be mirror, and the reflection we study is our own. This possibility reframes 3I Atlas entirely. Its anomalies may not matter as much as our response to them. The comet did not change us the way we thought about it did. It revealed hunger, fear, wonder. It exposed our imagination as much as our instruments, and in that exposure, it hinted that the true dialogue is not between us and the stars, but between us and ourselves. The danger is to ignore this frontier. We may build rockets to Mars while failing to resolve our divisions on Earth. We may send probes to interstellar space while failing to understand the neural space inside our minds. Without inner clarity, outer exploration risks collapse, because technology, without wisdom, magnifies arrogance instead of humility. The inward frontier also carries hope. If we can understand the roots of consciousness, we may discover that awareness itself is universal, not because the universe speaks to us, but because the act of seeking meaning is itself a cosmic pattern. Every conscious being, if they exist, may project, imagine, wonder, just as we do. In that sense, the search inward may reveal common ground with any intelligence we might one day meet. So what does it mean to turn the search inward? It means to study not only stars, but dreams. Not only orbits, but fears. Not only signals, but imagination. It means to recognize that every telescope is also a mirror, reflecting our own hunger for belonging. And in that reflection, we see the truest frontier, the one that has been with us all along. Perhaps 3i Atlas was never about the comet at all. Perhaps it was about us, about how we respond to anomaly, to silence, to uncertainty. It was not message from the cosmos, it was message from ourselves. A reminder that until we learn to listen to our own minds, we cannot hope to listen to the universe, because the frontier of stars begins with the frontier within. And so I end with this thought. The greatest journey humanity will ever take may not be across galaxies, but across its own consciousness, to explore not the silence beyond, but the silence inside. And in that silence, we may finally find the meaning we seek. In the end, 3i Atlas may never return. Its fragments may drift unseen, its anomalies fade into memory. But the comet's legacy is not in the sky, it is in us. It forced us to ask questions we were not ready to answer. It showed that silence can teach, that uncertainty can inspire, that wonder can be enough. Whether message or illusion, archive or omen, 3i Atlas revealed that humanity is still learning to listen, still struggling to endure mystery. Perhaps the universe will never speak, perhaps we are alone, or perhaps the silence is deliberate, waiting for us to grow wise enough for dialogue. Either way, the responsibility is ours. The meaning of the comet is not fixed in the heavens, it is written in our response. If we choose fear, we collapse. If we choose arrogance, we blind ourselves. But if we choose patience, humility, and wonder, we endure. And endurance, even in silence, is dialogue enough. So when I look back on 3i Atlas, I do not see comet. I see mirror. A mirror asking who we are and who we wish to become. The sky may remain silent, but our search, our questions, our refusal to stop listening, that is the voice we give back to the universe. And in that voice, humanity begins to truly belong among the stars. The journey forward has only begun.